Hello everyone, this is me Anime Monster and I have a new what if, but don't worry, I will continue doing texting story. The only sometimes when I have no time to write something up I will put a fanfiction, so let's get started. This What If My Hero Academia X Sonic the Hedgehog by Silver Psychic, so let's start the video. Not everyone is so fast. Those were the first words to hit his ears, being stuck and technically paralyzed under rubble and his body unable to respond to unclear thoughts. He was only half there. Only his ears functioned well enough to do anything, receiving sounds and telling him he was in the midst of something bad. His instincts screaming to run or just get out. His brain was sluggish and his body didn't respond to even the simplest commands. All he could do was listen. Being only half conscious made things even worse. He didn't even have the power to mentally do a quick health check. He tried hard to make even a simple twitch, but his body felt numb. He wasn't even sure if he had one. Fuzzy and muffled, a cry called out, "Watch out!" The wind ruffle softly warned everyone nearby something was wrong and to disperse from the area. "I will obliterate everything you've protected." An eerily close, also muffled, spine-chilling voice threatened, and the wind stirred, trying to help him get away from this unseen threat. A large blast resounded after those words. The wind picked up in speed and a yelp from above caused him to realize he was in the midst of a rather large-scaled fight. He had to get out. But he couldn't move. He was so helpless. The wind around him flew upwards and dirt and debris landed on him and on top of his head. "First to go will be your self-respect," the same eerie voice stated rather smugly, as if he completed something he couldn't see. Which he probably did, and ridicules public image. "Show the world how pitiful you really are." The words and tone were bitter and he struggled to once more command his body to do a simple thing. Move his fingers. With no luck, a deeply loathing tone stated, "Symbol of peace." There was silence besides the soft wind and panting. He struggled to awaken his brain more to find out who was talking. And who was being defeated. Hollow cheeks and sunken eyes, the loathing tone turned into a more mocking one. "To think you're their greatest hero." A rock from above clipped his ear, causing half of the sentence to be more muffled. "Now the wrong. Try not to be ashamed." The words were to egg his opponent on. Right. It was hard to tell, but they were pretty mean. There was soft clunking of metal and rocks as the two fights moved into better positions. The wind pleaded, pulling his hair. He had to go. But he barely had strength to stay awake. He was barely processing the words. "Your move," the dark voice said rather calmly, as if ready to be attacked by any attack. More rocks moved and cloth rubbed upon itself, and a new voice spoke, one that was strong and hopeful, one that was determined and full of light. "Even as my body rots and grows frail, even as you expose my weakened state." Knee, a quick clenching sound and the wind began to calm. "In my heart, I remain the symbol of peace." A soft glow began to calm him as he listened intently from the sides. "And there is nothing you can do to take that from me." The darker fighter seemed to find that amusing. "Is that so? Ah, well, I'd forgotten how stubborn you are. I guess I'll just give up." "Oh, but there is one thing you might be interested to know." He knew this trick. His heart raced as he hoped this symbol of peace guy would ignore his opponent, Tomura Shigaraki. "My apprentice. This was bad, oh so very bad." He knew this next line all too well. He is Nana Shimura's grandson. The wind froze and the world was deathly quiet. He knew, well, he didn't know this symbol of peace, but he knew the villain well enough to know, by the sounds of everything. The hero knew Nana Shimura well, cared for her to some extent, though he didn't know what type of care. Romance. Mother. Friend. Sister. Something else. "I kept wondering what would annihilate your golden heart, and so I found Tomura." The villain yapped on as if this were a talk about what coffee he thought tasted good, groomed him to hate you, and watched as you smiled so proudly as you beat your master's descendant. Now this was all just salt in the wounds. "That's a lie." The hero rasped out, sounding desperate, hoping more than knowing it was fake. The villain seemed happy with this outcome. "Oh come now. You know it's the truth." He mentally winced and prayed to chaos that the symbol of peace could stand strong. "That is clearly something I would do." His mind awoke more as a mental image of a dark being looked at him with beady eyes, grinning even with no mouth. "Huh. Well, that's strange, All Might." His eyes struggled open as he forced himself to help, even if that meant with just his words. "No. You. Monster. Stop talking to him." His words were soft and most likely unheard, his raspy voice causing him the need to cough. "Where is your smile now?" The villain chuckled, not hearing or ignoring the helpless kid. This action made his blood boil. He isn't mad that All for One is ignoring him, more like that he is still yapping on to All Might. Also what he said is pretty mean. A blurry, shaking figure stood only a few feet in front of him, whispered, "You bass tard." The opponent continued to laugh. "How very entertaining. I think I have taken a piece of you after all." "He's my master's grandchild." The helpless white-haired boy knew this feeling that the hero felt. My God, what would she say if she knew how we turned out? He sounded broken, just how the villain wanted. The symbol of peace screamed, loudly. His vision blurred heavily at this action and he strained to pull his hedgehog ears back, hugging his head to cover from the loud noise. The white-haired kid focused all his attention at All Might, who looked like he was ready to give up, summoning all his strength and will of consciousness. Don't lose. He moved his arm and forced himself through the pain. Keep going. All Might. He was gritting his teeth as he pushed himself upwards so his face pointed directly at the hero's back. They need you. He yelled loudly, knowing that all he could do. For now. He needed the hero to hear. He knew how he felt. A faraway yell echoed, too muffled for the ivory-haired boy to make out, his amber eyes locked on the hero. An electric-like energy surrounded the hero and his arm changed into a buffer. One, fear not, boy. Tears were stained on his cheeks because of the pain and he looked straight at the hero. I'm not done yet. The kid, known as Silver, the hedgehog, smiled and his eyes brightened. You were right, a hero has so much to protect in this world. All Might lifted his head and glared at the villain, which is why I will defeat you. Silver smiled, glad this time he was heard. His strength fading, his hands glowed a soft cyan and he gave All Might all of his remaining strength. Silver saw a moving shape in the distance, but his arms fell beneath him and his eyes closed. His ears only got bits and pieces of the battle. The last of your strength, Might. The villain sounded far away, meaning he was slipping away into a sleep. Silver chuckled softly before sending one last thought, every bit of power and strength he had in him, to the hero, Heros, help others, so I'm willing to give you all that I have left, just win, okay? And with that, he fell into unconsciousness. Chapter 1. Lost Memories. 2 people. Below the rubble. And more over there. A soft woman's call said and sirens rang loudly in Silver's ears as his overly lethargic amber eyes opened. The heroes began rescue operations during All Might's fight, but the scope of damage is staggering. Authorities are estimating a large number of casualties. The villain who caused this is there. He is being led into the maiden right now. Meanwhile All Might and the other heroes remain on high alert, a father woman said to a man holding a camera. They watched and they froze and turned around looking at a skinny and bloody man. The man had blonde hair and hidden sky blue eyes, beaten and looking like he needed a hospital trip. Now it's your turn, the man said and his finger pointed at the camera and both the cameraman and the lady gasped. He slowly brought it down and Silver's eyes trailed from the hero and to the ground he was stuck in. He looked at his predicament and whimpered, making a weak attempt to free his right arm. The injured man looked at Silver after hearing his soft cry and slowly walked over to him. The white-haired kid looked up at the man, his expression confused, lost, pained, sad, worried, and terrified. The innocent kid watched as the weakened man began to dig Silver out. You helped me, twice. That extra power, was that your quirk? The man asked softly and Silver looked up at him. He was soon able to pry his right arm out of the rubble. I'm not sure what you mean. Silver looked at him, my head feels blank. The skinny man stopped and looked at Silver. You don't remember anything? Other than my name, no, and I only remember my first name. Silver blinked and looked down and gave a weak attempt to lift himself out of the hole, but I feel super drained. Do you know who I am? Do you remember cheering me on? The man asked and Silver's arms buckled under him and he fell after his attempt to lift himself up. Silver fell on his face, not having strength to try again. He just looked up. No, neither, sorry sir. The man helped dig him out some more. What is your name, kid? Silver, what's yours? Silver looked up, having the face of pure innocence. All Might, let's find your parents, Silver. They gotta be around here somewhere. I owe you, you're a good kid. All Might pulled Silver out of the rocks and Silver smiled. The boy stumbled forwards and fell on his knees, his left leg in a rather horrible shape. I don't need anything, as long as you helped, whatever I did went to a good cause. Amber eyes locked with hidden sky blue and All Might looked slightly surprised at Silver. Okay, I'll get back to you on that. Hey, news lady. All Might called and the camera looked at both Silver and All Might. Can this kid's parents come and get him? Has anyone seen his family? Silver blinked and looked at All Might and everyone was silent other than the occasional rock falling. No one answered so All Might looked at Silver. Might be a while before your family gets here, kid. You can stay with us in the U. Until then. Okay. All Might smiled and Silver looked lost. He looked at his hands and then back at All Might. What's a family? An anime sweat drop formed on All Might's face and he chuckled at Silver's comment. Oh geez, come on. Parents of Silver, he will be at the UA high school until then. Silver yawned and his eyes lowered. He slightly swayed on his crawling position with his left leg sticking out and All Might flagged over some help as Silver closed his eyes and let the heroes carry him off to UA high, where Mr. Azirao was very unpleasant about this and Recovery Girl sighed and prepared a bed for the boy. Recovery Girl sat in the office. It had been a good day since Silver had been brought to the office and no one showed up for the kid, and he finally began to stir. He groaned lightly and his eyes opened, revealing hazy amber eyes that winced at the light. He wore a light greyish hospital gown, bandages wrapped around his broken leg, his silverish hair stuck up in an unruly mess, his face slightly dirty because of the fight but otherwise rather healthy. His boots sat next to the bed while his old clothes were nowhere in sight. The short human walked over to Silver and smiled. "Hello darling, I'm glad to see you awake. We have made a plan, mostly because All Might feels bad about your head, so you will be staying with us until someone picks you up. There is a dorm for you here too, and All Might managed to persuade Nezu and Aizawa into letting you take hero classes." Recovery Girl chirped and Silver looked utterly lost. The white-haired human sat up slowly and looked at the nurse. Thank you. But it's not really his fault, I told him I don't need anything. Sure, but he is stubborn. What's your quirk, sweetie? They need to know so they can help train it, something where you give others your strength. Seems pretty useful. The old lady nodded thoughtfully and opened a drawer. I don't remember. Recovery Girl opened Silver's hand and placed a Milky Way in his hand. I'm not even sure I have one, thank you. Silver looked curiously at the candy and Recovery Girl sighed and nodded. Okay, All Might wanted to walk you to your dorm. You will start school tomorrow. Also here is a spare change in clothes because your others were rather destroyed. We sent out a request for your hero costume to be like what you were wearing, if that's alright with you. The nurse said as Silver took the folded up pair of jeans and t-shirt. He hugged them close and got up. I'm not sure what I was wearing before, but I'm sure whatever you ordered will do. Thank you, I'm feeling a lot better. Recovery Girl smiled and asked him to stay in the room for a minute as she got the former hero. The bandaged hero walked in with his arm in a sling. I'm glad you're feeling better, young Silver. I heard you learned about your surprise. Mother of Iblis, are you sure you don't need to be here? That's a lot of raps. Are you okay to be up? Silver dropped the clothes and ran over to All Might, not processing the hero's words, and began checking him over. Whoa. I'm fine, young Silver. Let's go see your dorm, alright. All Might changed the subject and Silver gave a not believing eye and sighed. Silver picked up the clothes and hugged them close to his chest again and glanced at the hospital gown. You can return that once you get settled into your dorm. Go on, you mustn't be too late. I'm sure the class would like to meet you. Recovery Girl urged and All Might led Silver out and they began their walk. They were quiet for a while, the soft outside breeze playing with their hair, so All Might decided to spark a conversation. He looked over and saw Silver fiddling with the candy and he was looking confused at it. You eat it. All Might answered before Silver could ask and the surprised kid sniffed it and shrugged, plopping the whole thing in his mouth. Not in the wrapper. All Might looked terrified and Silver looked at him and spit it out into his hand. All Might chuckled oddly and took the wet wrapper and opened the slimy candy, handing Silver the chocolate-covered marshmallow with caramel. Silver this time looked at All Might to make sure this was okay to eat and All Might gave a go-ahead nod, having Silver hesitantly place it in his mouth and slowly chew the small candy and his eyes lit up. All Might smiled and threw the garbage away in a nearby trash can. Looking around to spark another conversation, All Might glanced at the sky and heard Silver's footsteps increase. The hero glanced at Silver and saw his eyes shone like happy kids. Hey, Silver looked at All Might with a smile, turned that frown upside down. You just saved the world. Silver ran his head and did a quick cartwheel, smiling looking at All Might and hopped up. His hair rained with dirt but his face was bright. All Might chuckled, you're sure happy. Silver nodded. I mean, look around. This world might not be here if you lost. It's all so beautiful. Silver trailed off and looked up at the almost cloudless sky. Dreams of an absolution, he softly muttered with a smile and looked forwards to see the dorms just ahead. That's it, isn't it? Wow. It's so big. Silver began to circle around All Might like an over-energetic kid about to go to Disneyland. It didn't take long to get there and once they did, they watched a class of kids walk in as well. All Might chuckled and nodded, giving Silver the go-ahead to running up and following his new classmates. Just inches away from the door, Silver froze. All Might hummed at this and walked up and placed his hand on Silver's shoulder. What's wrong? The hero asked softly and Silver looked at his outstretched hand. The hand slowly, barely noticeable at first, made its way down to Silver's side. What if they think I'm weird? I'll be pushed aside, they already know each other so well, what if they don't want me to come? Silver faced downwards looking at his hands, or... Stop right there, All Might lifted Silver's face upwards. I know they will like and want to help you, especially young Midoriya. All Might smiled, come on, don't let that fear stop you. Silver blinked and thought about this deeply for a second. I'm going to stand out, but I won't let this stop me. You're inviting me here so I will show my thanks. Silver looked up strongly and smiled at All Might. Let's do this. Silver opened the door just in time to see a girl pass out and Silver yelped, "Uraraka." A taller boy with glasses yelled to the left and Silver stared at the girl in worry. Not too far away, a shorter boy with purple hair was sweating, or something. Doth mine ears deceive me? Our baths are located in the common space. He took a gulp. Is this heaven? They're separated by gender, and you'll behave yourself. An older man, more like the age of All Might, said in a low voice, facing the other direction, and a creepy red aura surrounded him. Yes sir, answered the purple-haired kid in a scared tone. Everyone seemed so psyched out about the new dorms, they didn't notice Silver yet. All Might chuckled and watched their reactions. Living quarters start on the next level, 4 girls and 4 boys for most levels. Everyone gets their own room, each equipped with your own AC, toilets, fridges and closets. You should be comfy. These are your dorm arrangements. The things you sent ahead are here, so you should spend the day getting unpacked and settled in. Get to work. And with that, everyone separated and All Might mouthed he would be back later to introduce him. Silver was on one of the top levels, room 21. There was a bed already set up with pure white sheets and 2 pillows. A desk sat in the corner with a computer, mouse, and phone. Inside the desk drawers, some paper and pencils were held, along with a binder, markers, and some school books. There was an All Might poster on the wall above his bed with a note written on it, "Sorry about what you went through, I hope this makes it up to you. All Might," and there was a suitcase on his bed with the digital green numbers, 21, on it. Silver opened the large yellow curtain and looked out his window and saw the balcony and smiled. The fridge had some milk, eggs, butter, and some meat inside along with some flour, sugar, pasta, and various other things on top as dry food. There was also a calendar, trash can, alarm clock, first aid and other normal room things on the table next to the bed. Silver sighed. All Might really hooked him up. With nothing really to unpack, Silver changed into the loose jeans and darkish blue t-shirt with the words, "Keeping it chill." Silver placed the case by the table and set up his phone and computer. The day passed as he explored the tech and he heard a soft tink on his window. He peeked out and saw All Might by the door and Silver smiled and ran down to the bottom floor. "Hello everyone, I know you're a bit confused about this sudden visit," All Might said to the boys resting on the couch. The girls walked up surprised and All Might smiled. "Not sure if any of you have met Silver yet, but he is a new student." All Might nodded at Silver who walked out of the elevator and smiled at All Might. Chapter 2. Classmates. The pale-haired boy walked out of the elevator. "I told you I don't need anything. That was a lot more than nothing. Or just a spot in you." "Hi." Silver laughed, seriously. "Thank you." A green-haired boy gasped, "Wait, you're the boy who was stuck," and cheered All Might on. He ran up to Silver. "I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, but how?" All Might came in and placed his hand on Izuku's shoulder and whispered, "He is here because that fight caused him to have severe amnesia. His quirk is amazing, but he barely knows his own name. He gave me extra strength in the battle and I could hear his thoughts when he did, but he was already drained when he used it, so it took everything out of him." Silver looked at All Might. "Stop. Stop it. I don't like this." Silver frowned at the former hero. Izuku blinked. "He doesn't remember his quirk?" Midoriya asked with shock. "Now you're doing it." Silver sighed. "I'm Silver. My quirk will come to me someday. Right now it's nice to meet you, Izuku." "Ah right, you too, Silver." Izuku smiled at Silver and the lost kid nodded and looked at All Might. All Might smiled. Yeah. Okay, so everyone, this is Silver. He doesn't remember anything, so he kinda takes things a bit literally. He is a good kid, so don't train him into something he's not." All Might glanced at a blonde-haired kid. Honestly, it looked like an explosion went off on his head. "Whatever," the kid said and walked off. All Might sighed. "Okay, I'll let you guys get introduced. Play nice." As the hero walked out the door, Silver looked at Izuku. "Anyway, me and the girls were thinking about going around and seeing whose room is the coolest." A pink-skinned girl said and smiled. I'll try and get through this quickly because I don't want it to take up the whole chapter." And a few seconds later they went into Izuku's room with him yelling sadly. All Might was everywhere, like it was overwhelming. Next they visited a boy named Tokoyami, his room being dark and he pretty much just shoved them all out again. Aoyama was next. His room looked like a disco ball with mirrors. This was going to help him meet his classmates and have fun. This was fun, right? They skipped the purple hair boy whose name was Mineta and headed to Ojiro. His room was mostly empty, like something you would find in a hotel. The class representative was next, Iida. His room was like a library and Silver immediately loved it. Kamiri was like a jockey's room or something. Koda's was simplistic, but also with a pure white rabbit. Silver began fawning over the pet like the other girls, enjoying whatever was going on. Mainly because he had no idea what a contest was. Everyone stopped on the third floor for a bit and Izuku stood next to Silver. Man, this sucks, I feel so judged right now. Kamirari said with a sigh. Ojiro glanced at Kamirari. Hey, what a coincidence. I don't feel great, at all. Same here. Tokoyami said in a deep tone, not looking up. Et moi. Aoyama said with his hands behind his head. Silver just shrugged. I think it's fun. It's a good way to meet you all. Just wait until it's your turn, we'll see how you feel. Kamiri said and Silver smiled. I have no idea what's going on, so probably the same. The cheerful boy said in a rather happy tone. Izuku blinked. It's a best room contest. He said, trying to hopefully fill Silver in, and the white-haired kid nodded. Yeah, I know that. But I have no clue what a contest is. Silver said and Izuku froze. Oh. The shocked boy answered, well, what does this seem like to you? Like we are just walking around peeking in each other's stuff, invading personal privacy. And I'm learning names and faces, also a pretty good idea of their personality. Silver smiled. I can't wait for you guys to see my room. Mineta came marching up. We feel hurt, judged, and most of all laughed at. That's because the boys are the only ones getting picked on. They said it was a contest to see who has the coolest dorm room. He pointed at the girls, but what about them? We have to see the girls' room to tell which one's best. His mouth had the smallest glint of drool. Their interior design skills should be held at the same standard as ours, maybe even higher. Show us those dorms. I thought we were seeing everyone's rooms anyway. Silver shrugged, still not getting it. Naive little soul. The pink-skinned lady clapped her hand together. I'm into it. The girl behind her looked shocked. Everyone agreed to this and Silver heard Izuku gulp. The girls' dorms. I suppose, if we must. He said and Silver blinked. Did he mean to say that aloud? What's any different about our rooms and theirs? Silver asked confused and no one answered him, leaving him to sigh and follow the gang into the elevator. So they went to Karishima's room next. It looked like, well, a den of manliness. Shoji was up and it was empty. Literally two things, a blow-up mattress and a desk. That's it. Finally they made it to the 5th floor. Saro's room was first here. His room was exotic as the pink lady said. Next was Todoroki's room where that literally was the look you would expect when you said, Japanese house. The last one before Silver's room was Sato's. His room looked like a subtle country home, with a small oven. The room smelled sweet and Silver blinked at the new smell. Shoot. I finished unpacking super early so I made a chiffon cake. It's not iced, but you guys want some. He cut up the soft cake and all the girls were fawning over the fluffy cake. Sato's face turned bright red and he gave everyone some cake as he explained he made it for his sugar quirk. Silver grabbed the stick and squinted at it, remembering what he did with the Milky Way, and he glanced at Izuku who took a large bite into it and hummed. Silver slowly bit into his piece and warm, wonderful flavors hit his tongue and he stared at the cake with a shocked expression. Lastly they headed to Silver's room and he opened the door without hesitation. Your guys' rooms are better than mine, but All Might got me everything that's in here. Maybe you guys can come by again when I put some of my own stuff in it. Silver smiled and stepped back for them to get a good look at his room. I'm planning to get a hedgehog. Silver added because earlier he had seen a picture of one of the cute creatures on his computer and he instantly began to learn everything about how to care for one, even looked at stores for good hedgie pets, food, water bowls, cages, and virtuous other things. Izuku ran over to the All Might poster and began muttering like crazy and his tone was overly excited. Mineta lifted up a quick sketch Silver drew of a hedgehog and the various foods they eat, habitats, predators, facial expressions and other stuff and began gawking. What the heck? How are you so good at drawing? Mineta cried and a girl with short brown hair took the picture and gasped. You're trying for the ladies. The pervert eyed Silver with a very dubious look. Oh. She cooed, looks just like it. How? Not just like it, I sorta messed up on the coyote, and the hissing pose needs work. Oh. When it was eating very hard. You'd think it looks good. Silver pointed out his mistakes which were technically unseeable unless you looked really close next to the real picture. Karashima smiled, dude. It looks like a black and white photo. Your shading is awesome. Well, we know what you like to do before the whole can't remember anything. Geez. You must have practiced for months to build up this skill. He patted Silver on the back and the pink-skinned girl nodded and they went down to the first girl's room on the bottom floor, Jiro. Silver gasped at the sight. It was like the most famous band's music room. Like, this was awesome. Silver reached down at the guitar and decided to ask Jiro later if he could borrow some of her equipment. They moved on to Hagakure, which was cute like a little girl's room. The cherry curtains were really nice. Next they moved to the pink-skinned girl's room. Ashido. Her room was also something really girly, but more like a rock Barbie. Uraraka was one Silver really enjoyed, he wasn't sure why. It was a lot like Orgio's, simplistic and plain, but it seemed more poor. But he was pretty sure the best thing in her room was the star chart above her bed. Since they skipped Sue, the last one was Yaoyorozu. Her room was very cramped and fancy, like a princess lived in here or something. They were done going around and checking rooms, so it was time to vote. After a quick explanation from Iida on how it works, Silver wrote for Uraraka. Ashido tallied up the votes and it ended up that Sato had won. The girls all voted him in because of the cake. Silver laughed and Uraraka called Todoroki, Izuku, who she called Deku, Iida, Yaoyorozu and Kirishima. Silver blinked in confusion and he heard Mineta and Kaminari beating up Sato in the background as he watched the small group head outside. Silver's mind replayed the worried tone in Uraraka's voice and after a few minutes he walked up to the window and saw they were all crying around Sue, the frog girl. Silver wasn't sure what to do. Silver woke up early the next day, being his first day at the new school and all. He quickly gathered everything, brushed his teeth, his hair, ate some breakfast, and grabbed his hero suit. Wearing his new school uniform, Silver followed the class to the school and held the straps of his red backpack and smiled. Since there was already a pretty good seating arrangement, Silver had an extra desk which was behind Uraraka. I believe I mentioned this already, but your main focus this summer is to obtain hero provisional licenses. Do not take this lightly, a hero license means you're responsible for human lives. You can imagine the exam to receive one is very difficult. Only 50% of students pass the requirements to get one of these each year. Mr. Azirawa said and glanced at Silver. Mineta was shaking and sweating, it's that hard to get one. Azirawa gave a dark glare, in order to prepare, today you'll concentrate on creating something new. 3 adults stood in the doorway, 2 ultimate moves. Silver slightly spaced out, still subconsciously listening and taking in the info, worrying about this a bit. He didn't even know his quirk. This was bad, he was already behind, didn't know his quirk, didn't remember anything, apparently also had no family, Yeah bud, sorry to say they are dead in the future of another world. And now he was supposed to catch up and create 2 super moves. Some first day of school, Sorry, yeah. Totally forgot to make the moves, so let's say Aizawa excuses him formed it during the little speech while Silver spaced out. Hey. Yeah I know it's weak. He'll make later. He snapped out of his trance when Mr. Aizawa walked up and motioned that he was going to stay behind for a minute. You also have to make a hero name. Silver had already been told this by All Might, so he had a heads up and had some ideas in mind. I've been thinking. The future hero, psychic. It kinda just came to me and stuck. Sounds fine to me, but if you ever want to change it, just talk to one of us. Mr. Aizawa said before telling him to go change. He walked in and changed into his hero costume, like everyone else, while Silver was amazed at everyone's and his own. It was like Monoma's, but he still had his boots and gloves, black pants, and his trench coat thing was a darker grey. The pale-haired boy told everyone his hero name and they nodded, saying it was oddly fitting. Silver smiled at the soft fabric and followed his class to Gym Gamma, where they each got their own concrete mountain and ectoplasm copy. Let's first see your fighting style, then we will work on finding and triggering your quirk. Don't worry about hurting me, I'm just a copy as you already know. Silver's copy of the hero said and Silver nodded, bouncing into pure instinct fighting. Silver quickly learned the copy never used his hands, so Silver used that to his advantage. He threw a quick punch at his head, the copy having dodged, Silver kicked the copy in the back. It fell forwards and they fought for a good 10 minutes. Finally Silver was able to make his copy melt and he yelped, almost falling off his little training area. He's gone. Silver called downwards and another copy appeared and Silver panted, nodding at the copy. The ectoplasm copy moved on to trying to trigger and find out what Silver's quirk was. They tried many things like trying to push it out, making Silver mad, which was hard, laughing, hurting him, and other trigger things. Lastly, the copy thought of trying to scare Silver. He grabbed Silver and flipped him over, making the supposed kid land on his back hard. Ow! Silver cried and tears formed as he rolled over and slowly got up, that hurt. With only one other idea left in mind, the copy cried out much louder than needed, villain. That made everyone turn and activate their powers, including Silver. So how Silver activated his quirk was very painful. He jumped, his eyes wide and backed away looking around for the villain. Of course the clumsy kid backed up too far and fell backwards, yelping as he tumbled down. Once he hit the bottom, Mr. Aizawa ran over to him, quickly checking, or trying to, his pulse. Why his pulse, Aizawa? Why not his head? Okay, I'll shut up now. Before the hero could reach him though, a strong cyan hue lifted the pro-hero off the ground, along with everyone else in the room, excluding Silver himself and a few of the concrete mountains. Silver gasped and gripped his head hard, tears skating down his cheeks and falling onto the floor. Curled up in a simmy ball, Silver whimpered, his eyes shut tightly and his hands clenching tightly on his head, almost ripping out his hair. Make it stop. Make it stop. Silver cried helplessly, clawing at his head. It hurts. His tone was no longer panic, more like in immense pain and about to pass out. Silver wasn't moving much, only keeping his slowly loosening hold on his hair and subtly shaking. His breathing slowly became panting in a matter of seconds and Mr. Aizawa could see a not too cool end to this. The teacher quickly activated his quirk and all the cyan quickly faded and everyone began to fall. Bakugo, Uraraka, Saro, Todoroki, and Karishima all activated their quirks and avoided a dire hit to the floor. Yoerizu quickly made a large pillow for everyone and they landed safely, the extra concrete crashing and exploding into a million little shards farther away so no one was hurt, well maybe except Silver and Yoerizu. Mr. Aizawa quickly walked over to Silver and examined his condition before telling everyone to get back to work and he checked Silver's pulse. It was rapid, but also shallow, his body was constantly shaking. His breath was deep and his eyes were barely open, hazy but he was awake. He will be okay, but that is a strong quirk. If he doesn't learn to control it soon, it could be really hazardous whenever triggered. But this isn't anything like what All Might explained, this was a lot more like Uraraka's quirk, Mr. Aizawa said and the girl glanced at the hero. All Might walked in, what you're doing over there Eraserhead? Oh crabs. All Might quickly realized the situation when he saw Silver on the floor. You got his quirk to activate. Yes, but not like you explained. Somehow his quirk lifted everyone but him and a few of these hills into the air. Mr. Aizawa said and All Might went wide-eyed. Izuku walked past and stopped before Aizawa shooed him away. All Might sighed and Silver looked up at the hero. I'm hungry, Silver hinted at him. He had lost almost all his energy and All Might smiled seeing he was alright. All Might turning into his buff form, hello hungry. I'm All Might. Haha. And back into his weak form. Midnight ran off and came back with a bit of cake from Sato and handed it over to Silver who slowly nibbled on it. Mr. Aizawa watched Silver as the extra sugary cake hit his system. His eyes were no longer hazy and he slowly got up. Tea thank you. Silver said as he licked the remaining bits of cake crumbs and frosting off his fingers. All Might went back to a more serious demeanor. So your quirk hurts. Silver finished holding his head. I don't like it. It felt like my head getting ripped in half from the inside out. He looked down. I don't want to feel that every time I use it, maybe I'll just never use it again. Silver looked at his hands and Midnight sauntered over. She bent down to look Silver in the face. Sorry darling, but you're going to have to use it sometimes. And we are going to make it so it doesn't hurt so bad. That's all over what we are about. Plus ultra. She smiled and Silver slowly grew a smile too. First we have to learn what your quirk is called, and its properties. We should also maybe, Mr. Aizawa said and helped Silver stand up, only to be wrapped in a cyan hue and begin to fly upwards. The teacher quickly used his quirk and to his surprise, Silver was only rubbing his head blinking. He didn't look in pain, only a bit muddled and confused. All Might hummed at this and Midnight sighed with relief. How did that feel? Mr. Aizawa asked, seeing a difference in Silver's actions. Silver rubbed his forehead. It didn't hurt. But it did feel very weird, and I have a small headache. Can you explain what very weird is? Midnight asked and Silver nodded. He stretched out his hands. I'll try. It kinda felt like I had another hand, and it was coming out of my head, but it was more like a ghost hand. That makes no sense. Silver sighed and face-palmed. Mr. Aizawa took his hand. Let's go to the design studio, Mr. Paoloda might be able to find out your quirk's name and how it works. Maybe he can also find something to control it better. Silver followed his teacher. All Might called out to Silver, young Midoriya might be able to help. And so they were off. They came in just in time to see Iida get boosted and rocketed into the ceiling. Silver yelped and jumped back again and the cyan hue began to grab many random things, and lift them as well. Mr. Aizawa used his quirk again, looking at Silver with a harsh, stop it, glare. Silver slunk a little and looked away from his teacher feeling bad. The newcomers heard both Uraraka and Izuku scream at the same time, Iida. And a few seconds later Iida was on the ground. My quirk is in my legs you madwoman. Iida said through gritted teeth. A girl with pink locks of hair spoke up, yeah I know, but you don't understand. It's so brilliant. If you're wanting to cool down your legs, then why don't you just run with your arms instead? Silver heard Izuku gasp so he looked over and saw his face slightly light up. Mr. Azirawa snapped Silver back into focus and spoke up. Excuse us, but we came here to find the name and properties of Silver's quirk. Mr. Aizawa stopped talking when he saw a cyan glow from behind him. As this was said, Silver's quirk activated again because the pink crazy lady was up in his face. Chapter 3. Telekinesis. The pink-haired girl fell upwards, along with a few of her babies, which Silver thought there were real babies in the room, causing him to freak out even more. The teacher rolled his eyes and once again used his quirk to stop Silver's from causing much of a problem. Mr. Aizawa placed some eye drops onto his seemingly dry eyes and sighed. Hatsum, his quirk activates randomly, but is stronger and more out of control when he is scared. And he has bad amnesia, so he tends to take things pretty literally. I wouldn't be screaming about babies with him around. Mr. Aizawa said calmly and looked at Mr. Powerloader. Izuku laughed lightly, she meant her support items. Silver looked at Izuku and let out a shaky breath. What do you think my quirk is? Silver asked Izuku, and the kid seemed shocked. What do I think your quirk is? Deku asked to make sure that he heard right, pointing to himself. Silver nodded. I'm not. Hatsum got all up in Silver's face again. Hi. I don't believe we have met before. I'm Mei Hatsum. I heard you have memory problems. I think I can fix that. Here. Hatsum backed up a little to show the baseball bat she appeared to be holding. Silver began to sweat and backed up, hopefully out of her reach. Why do I need that? She smiled and hit Silver in the head, everyone else in the room screaming, if you hit your head and you lost all of your memories, then hit it again and you'll regain them. Hatsum began repeatedly banging Silver on the head and Silver backed up yelping. Silver. Izuku began to pull him backwards away from her bat and his eyes hazed. Mr. Aizawa and Mr. Powerloader took the bat from Hatsum and she smiled. Look. It's working. Or you caused him to re-forget everything. Again. Iida said as Silver stared off into space, more like the ceiling, but Uraraka began to snap in front of Silver and his mouth hung slightly open. Mr. Aizawa growled at Hatsum and she giggled nervously. Iida dragged Silver over to a seat and Mr. Powerloader apologized for Hatsum. After another softer cyan hue began to form around Silver's hands, Mr. Aizawa almost used his quirk when Hatsum stopped him. I wanna see. She shouted and covered his eyes. Everyone backed away from Silver, not wanting to be tossed around like a rag doll, but what they saw instead made them all thank Hatsum, silently. I don't know why, but I think of Frozen 2 while I'm writing this. Well, never mind. No, I know, but you'll see in a minute. Soft figures with the cyan hue formed, like wispy ghosts of a long-buried memory. It was blurry, the figures were short and hard to make out. Their shapes were blurred, but they literally all could hear it. Make it stop. Make it stop. It hurts. It was Silver's voice, but younger. One of the smaller figures was bent over, hand on his head, crying. Hazy images of boxes, building parts, even a car door hovering around him. Deku gasped, figuring out what this was. Somehow, Silver was projecting a memory from when he was younger. No, not just one, muley put. A darker, shadowy figure bent down and patted the kid's head. Just calm down. If you get too emotionally strong, it will get worse. Imagine the stuff slowly being put down, okay? The figure said in a deep, calming voice. The younger Silver sniffled and looked up and slowly nodded, closing his eyes, and the stuff around him dropped to the floor. The hazy Silver blinked and cheered happily and hugged the older person. Another person walked up, this one a girl, and she was a lighter color blue. She smiled and glanced nervously at the older person being hugged. The scene changed into one where the younger Silver was drawing and hummed happily. He ran down the halls and reached for the door, stopping after he heard the voice and what they said. Shadow, what can we do with him? His power is getting too strong for him to even have a chance to control. He might hurt someone. It was soft and worried, the woman's voice. Her tone was stained with tears and there was a silence for a minute. The younger Silver stood by the door, hugging the picture closely and his hedgehog ears bent forwards. It's okay, Rose, he will get it. He does, remember. Maybe, he just needs inhibitor rings. Like I did when I was young. It was the deeper voice who spoke and his tone sounded slightly frightened. The young Silver stepped back and glanced at his hands. Why? Tears pattered down on the paper and he slowly sunk down, back to the wall and placed his head in his knees and began to sob. Another shift and they were all in a small room. The darker one gave Silver a small box and Silver took it and opened it with a gasp. He smiled and jumped up, hugging them both, and what sat on the bed, 4 large rings, a cyan band within them. Now this should help you control your powers better, Silver. They are made special, just for you. The older figure took Silver's hands and magically clipped them on, the other 2 just above his shoes. Don't take these off for a while, not until you're older and can have better control over such a big power, okay? Okay, Daddy. Silver smiled and hugged him again. Why is telekinesis my power so hard to control? Telekinesis, you get it. Silver, you're just young. One day it will feel so natural that you can use it like you use your eyes, without thinking. The woman said in a soft tone, and Silver blinked and pointed to his eyes. A flash in the seance, and it was different, only bits and pieces were seen. Silver in tears, running, both parents being crushed, flames, and a monster. The cries were loud and mixed, chaos and fear. Finale, and with one last scene it showed young Silver in a cave. Slowly he came to and looked around. What happened? He asked and got up holding his right arm, gritting his teeth in pain, and a worm-like thing burst out of the ground in front of Silver, and he cried and jumped back and covered his head with his hands. Help. Please. Someone. Anyone. The thing lunged at him and the wispy memory faded and everyone stood confused for a second. That escalated quickly. I just kinda made it. Hey. Don't look at me like that. Told ya it'd work. Hatsum said proudly, bursting the silent aurora, and Silver slowly came to, blinking like crazy. Mr. Azirawa glared. That was far too risky and careless. What were you thinking? Never mind, I don't want to know. The teacher took in an aggravated sigh. Once Silver came to his senses he jumped up. Where are they? I can't believe I forgot about my own stinking inhibitor rings. Where in the name of chaos? No need to get all jumpy, I was going to give 'em back. They were a bit banged up and so I thought they were just for show. I was fixing them to give 'em back, not so bent, but here. Mr. Powerloader to the rescue, and Silver immediately calmed down and placed them on. Silver sighed happily as he placed them on. Even if I just had one, then I would only work with that. That's it. Iida. Can you teach me? Izuku randomly said and got all up in the class rep's face. Iida made a confused face and backed up. You want my help with your hero training? But we haven't made any progress on our costume yet. Izuku stopped and nervously scratched behind his head with a right. Wow Deku. Your face just lit up a few seconds ago. Uraraka commented and Izuku nodded. Just realizing something. Hey Uraraka. I forgot to ask what you're here for. The green-haired boy said. Uraraka quickly answered, oh. Nothing special, just something that won't make me feel as sick while I use my quirk. Hatsum heard this and appeared behind the group of freshmen. If that's what you're looking for, try this baby. She said, slightly insane sounding. Everyone backed up. Why does it look like it's about to explode? Uraraka questioned and Silver prepared for another batting. Hatsum glanced at the barrel. Just handle it with care, sometimes it tends to, and cue massive explosion. Mr. Azirawa looked at Mr. Powerloader with a, why do you put up with this? Look inside. Silver coughed violently, apparently because it is Uraraka. He said and rubbed his eyes from the smoke. I can't believe he let you make a bomb. How is that supposed to make Uraraka not feel sick? Silver asked and Hatsum just giggled. Mr. Ozawa soon took Silver back to the training, now with a better idea on how to train him. 4 days later. Silver was practicing summoning a psychic knife, small amounts of cyan hue forming slowly in his hands. Within 4 days he had caught up with his own power, now being able to do a lot of his old moves again, like holding about 15 cars at once for a good hour, holding himself and flying around, the good old psychic dash, and he was working on his psychic knife. Silver had also, rather quickly, been getting his memory on how to use his power back, easily catching up with the class. He still didn't remember much else, but his fighting style was quickly returning. Like right now, just 2 minutes ago he was having trouble making a small knife and now it all came back to him, so he quickly made one of the sharp energy knives. Everyone was surprised about his quick relearning, along with Silver himself, but it soon became easy. Silver's ectoplasm copy nodded at his quick skill increase and was about to test how well Silver knew to fight with him when a loud cry called out. Watch out! It was Bakugo. Silver and everyone else looked over and saw a large stone heading towards All Might. Before Silver could calculate the distance and reach out to grab the rock with his quirk, Izuku jumped into action. Literally. He leaped up quickly and time pretty much slowed around him as he brought his leg up for a hard kick. Smash! Izuku yelled as the rocks fell into many small shards. Greenish lighting flashed around him and everyone seemed awestruck as Silver smiled as Izuku landed and a thin layer of dust flew up behind him. Silver clapped loudly and All Might smiled. You did it, kid. All Might said to Izuku and Silver cheered for his classmate. Izuku quickly made his way over to All Might. Are you alright, All Might? The young hero in training asked his idol. That was close. Yeah. All Might answered with a large grin, almost looking like he got a girlfriend for the first time or something. Dude, Midoriya. What was Kaminari began when Silver easily cut him off as he landed in front of Izuku. Silver was grinning almost as much as All Might. Chaos knows his reason. That was awesome. Pro hero style. And you saved the pro hero. I see the soccer style is helping you much better. Izuku smiled at Silver and nodded. Does he even remember those memories? He only ever acts like he remembers his inhibitors. Maybe if he had a pro help in time. No. I will help. I'll make sure, Izuku thought as he stared at Silver weirdly, and Silver began to awkwardly back up. Silver waved his hands in front of the not purposeful staring. Are you alright, Izuku? Silver asked worriedly, and Deku snapped back, nodding quickly. Sorry, I got lost thinking about something, Izuku said, scratching behind his head. Silver looked at him blankly. If you ever want to ask me anything, you can. Oh, no, it's okay. I know. Thanks. Anyways, I have been working hard and my fighting style has changed a bit. Nothing I would call an ultimate move yet though. Deku started nervously trying to cover up his mistake by changing the subject. I don't know, I think you're further along than you think. All Might claimed, and Silver quickly agreed. Sorry for the scare, young Bakugo. Bakugo stared angrily at Izuku for a bit, then yelled with an explosion, you watch yourself, All Might. All Might visibly slumped, and Silver silently cursed Bakugo for spoiling All Might's good mood. Silver heard Izuku, Kirishima, and Kaminari all talking, but before he could join, a deep voice quickly interrupted. That's enough, Class A. Silver turned like the rest of his class, and a large man stood in the doorway with about another 20 kids behind him. Class B is scheduled to use this training room afterwards every afternoon. You're not trying to kick us out when we have a whole 10 minutes left, are you? Mr. Azirao asked, and Silver just puzzled on why he hadn't seen these kids beforehand. Hey, did ya hear? The license exam rate has a 50% pass rate. That means your entire class might fail. A blonde-haired boy with a costume a lot like Silver's own said, and began to laugh like crazy. Silver slowly blinked at this kid. What's wrong with him? What, is that Monoma's hero costume? Kirishima asked loudly, and Silver gave another once-over to the kid named Monoma. Does he hate certain people within the class, or just the whole class for no good reason? Silver asked, and Izuku claimed he thought the second reason. Silver sorta got a bit into trying to figure out Monoma that he didn't really hear his classmates. Monoma began laughing again, and Silver officially concluded that the kid was crazy. Later that night, Silver hovered downstairs to find the girls all hanging around and Ashido screaming, "It's love." Silver honestly felt that they were talking to him, or about him. His heart stopped and a heavy blush appeared as he fell backwards, and he yelped. He wasn't sure why. He didn't like anyone in the school. The strawberry shortcakes he was holding flung into the air and right back down thanks to gravity and splattered all over him. When he rubbed off the cakes, he saw Uraraka flying above, shaking her head. Oh come on, you know we won't give up until we know, Jiro said, and Silver let out a silent breath of relief. Silver decided to interrupt this before it got worse by offering the remaining saved cakes. Hey girls. Silver walked in as if he hadn't freaked out and heard part of their conversation. I kinda had an urge to make these, and I had some extras, so I was going to see who was down here and if ya all wanted any. You okay up there, Uraraka? Silver asked, and the girl was staring out the window and flusteredly looked back at Silver and saw the yummy cakes. Uraraka took this chance to change the subject and get out of the embarrassing place of before. Ooh. Those look good. I didn't know you knew how to bake. You are. Release. Oof. She fell on the couch, and Silver handed her a cake along with the rest of the girls, and they all hummed with delight. Like it. I kinda just followed my instincts. Silver grinned and a light blush formed as all the girls nodded. Maybe I should tell Sato about this cake, Silver thought aloud and smiled to the girls. I'm going to give this to Sugar Rush. Excuse me for a second, Silver said, holding the cake, and flew off, glancing out the window and seeing Izuku. So that's who Uraraka likes, but I can't help but feel like I understand her. But who do I love? Is it love? Or maybe, Silver thought, and shook his head as he began his way to Sato's room again. Everyone was lined up outside by the bus. Today was the day of the exam. Silver had gotten a lot of his power memories back, not a ton more of his memories like how he learned to use the power or anything, but this didn't feel too scary to him. He wasn't sure why. Everyone else looked like scared stiff zombies, especially Izuku. Mineta rocked side to side nervously. What if I can't get my... Mineta, don't say what if, say you will. Mr. Ozawa surprisingly bent down and comforted the short human. Right, I will. Mineta still looked doubtful, and now he was creepily staring off into space with a freaky doubtful face. Mr. Ozawa stood up. If you guys can get these licenses, you novice eggs will hatch into chicks. You'll be semi-pros, so I expect your best. He looked at each one of the students with a mix of fear me and do it right glare, which was odd. Was that supposed to be comforting? All right. I can't wait to be a heroic chicken, Kaminari said, and Silver burst out laughing with that image in his head. Like, who wouldn't laugh at seeing Kaminari as a chicken with a cape? Silver was laughing so hard, tears formed and played freely on his cheeks. Clutching his stomach, Silver bent over laughing with a large grin. Glad that it makes someone smile. Kaminari chuckled at his fellow classmate and Silver just shook his head. Barely able to, Silver wheezed, that image. And began laughing harder. Karashima smiled and lifted his fist, let's call out the usual you guys. On my mark. Go plus. Ultra. A tall guy in the back yelled loudly, someone who wasn't from the class. Chapter 4 The Exam. Chapter 4. The Exam. Silver yelped and blinked looking at the newcomer. He hadn't seen this guy in class before and he wasn't ever in the dorms, was he new? Someone behind the tall, energetic guy spoke, you know, it's pretty rude to interrupt someone's huddles like that, Anaza. The tall guy froze. What? Pardon me. I am, so, the tall man slapped his arms to his sides, very, extremely, bending down, his head hit the floor as he yelled, sorry. The sidewalk beneath them all moved to this sudden action. Silver felt his heart stop, unable to be sure if it was from fear, worried about the guy's head, the loudness or what, but Silver stared with a mix of emotions, mostly it was too much chaos for a simple, sorry. Kaminari voiced what everyone was thinking at that moment, who is this guy? I do not trust his enthusiasm. His tone was pretty spot on too. Hey, look at their uniforms. Jiro pointed out. Sero identified them somewhat, they're from that famous school on the other side of Japan. Okay, that didn't help much for people like Silver, but that means these peeps are pretty big stuff, isn't UA like that? UA in the east, Shiksu in the west. Bakugo cleared up the remaining confusion by showing off his knowledge about the school, okay, the common knowledge of the school. Being next to Izuku, Silver could see Deku also knew about the school. The green-haired boy's face showed awe and fear, telling Silver, this wasn't going to be good. The floor boy decided not to look bad about his school and stood up quickly, brushing off some dust and grime off his outfit. The tall, slightly crazy high schooler from Shiksu stood up, his forehead bleeding, I wanted to say it just once. Plus ultra. Great chaos, his eyes made Silver freeze in place as his breath hitched, was this guy possessed? See, I really love the UA. Hi. Now he looked insane, very insane, I'm extremely honored to compete against such incredible students. I'm so looking forward to it. Silver was now shaking just looking at him, he was too loud, and chaotic. Ya'd think he'd be used to that sort of thing. The crazy kid's schoolmates began to walk away, let's go. The one who spoke before piped up and they all left in a group. Anaza Yoarashi. Mr. Ozawa said suddenly. All eyes turned to the teacher as Hagakure spoke up for the first time in a while. Do you know that guy, Mr. Ozawa? Her tone was soft and slightly scared. Indeed, he is strong. The teacher answered, making most everyone suck in a breath. He is the same year as you all. Silver could still hear Yoarashi from a distance, and received one of the top scores for students admitted through recommendations. But for some unknown reason, he turned down his acceptance to UA and went to Shiksu instead. Wait, he's our age? Izuku asked and looked at Todoroki. Silver glanced worriedly at his team, and back at the rather loud opponent. Silver pretty much zoned out as he studied his opponent, but quickly was brought back to reality when someone called out to their teacher. Silver blinked and looked at Mr. Azirawa to see the weirdest face that he had ever seen their teacher make. She looks familiar, Izuku said softly, and Silver looked over to see a teal-haired girl walking up to their teacher. She smiled, let's get married. The woman seemed about their teacher's age, but what she said was very sudden. No. Mr. Ozawa said quickly with a face Silver had seen so much on a face, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Actually, this whole scene looked familiar, so much so, Silver smiled, feeling a bit more at home. Crossing his arms, Silver relaxed and chuckled. This time Silver felt Izuku looking at him with a confused face. Ha ha. You're a real laugh riot, buddy. She laughed, covering her disappointment. Mr. Ozawa rolled his eyes, as usual, you're impossible, joke. Deku lit up, causing Silver to look at him with a light confused face. Once again the tables of confusion turned. Oh. That's Ms. Joke. The smile hero. Her quirk is outburst. Silver chuckled at Izuku and his hero facts. She forces people to laugh, which affects their ability to think, and keeps them from being able to move. Ah, their fights against villains are always full of insanity. That was kinda cool, but then again, his quirk was all about thinking. Glad they weren't going up against her. Wait, they weren't right. Come on. Imagine it. If I was your wife, you would have a future full of constant laughter. Mr. Joke smiled. Silver lightly gasped and a memory from the past found its way out of the heavy fog blocking it. Sonic. A blurry pink person yelled and huffed, ugh. I just want to tell him this funny joke, she pouted and Silver chuckled, reaching out and touching her shoulder. Silver smiled and attempted to cheer her up. Amy, I'm sure whoever you marry, they will have a future full of constant laughter. The pink girl looked at him. Whoever I marry. Excuse me. Who do I marry? Tell me. It's not Sonic. IRW what? I don't know. Silver backed up with worry and she giggled. Amy stuck her tongue out. I'm gonna marry Sonic. You know that. Even if I'm supposed to marry someone else, I'm gonna change it to Sonic. And, same goes for you, Silver. Wait, do you want to hear it instead? Silver shrugged, sure. Silver blinked back into reality to find Deku staring at him, wide-eyed. Silver was about to ask what was wrong when a kid with black hair took Izuku's hands. Silver spaced off again as he tried to remember more. The same boy took his hands and said something to him, but Silver only stared, digging deep in the fog cloud to uncover more. Silver probably freaked the boy out cause he made a weird face and moved on to someone else, but Silver was too busy to care. It was like dropping a good book at a great part. He dug some more in the heavy mist, getting nowhere, and huffed in annoyance. He closed his eyes and scrunched up his face in concentration, mentally waving around at the mist. Sadly, still nothing happened. Silver was about to throw something in his power and scream with aggravation when Izuku tapped his shoulder, causing him to snap back and growl at Deku. Ah, you okay? Did I make you mad or something? Izuku asked, slightly worried, and Silver quickly shook his head. Silver's entire face changed. No, no. You're fine, I kinda got mad at myself. Hey, Silver smiled, so what's going on? Get into your costume and head to orientation. Mr. Ozawa repeated, annoyed. Silver nodded, okay. He and Izuku quickly headed off to do what they were asked, before they got a mad Aizawa chasing them. Silver stood by Izuku, Uraraka, and Iida in a rather packed tent thing. A.N. If ya can't tell, Silver trusts Izuku pretty much the most out of anyone here. Hey, you wanna know why? It's because I think I'll tell you later. Hundreds, maybe even 1,000 kids were in their hero costumes. Silver glanced around and felt a weird feeling in his chest, a mix between anxiety and awe. A man groaned in front and everyone looked ahead. Ah, let's do this exam thing. I'm from the Hero Public Safety Commission. Name's Mera. His tone gave the vibe of, I hate my life, I've been swamped lately and I haven't gotten much rest. Yep, definitely doesn't want to be here to say the least. We are too short-staffed, I'm so tired. With that confession, I'll now begin orientation. Why not just have someone else do it? Silver muttered sympathetically to Mera, is he the only not lazy one? Snapped out of his thinking, Silver's estimates were right, so basically 1,540 examins compete in a free-for-all exercise, or whatever we are calling it this year. Silver seriously couldn't do this. Mera just sounded too sleepy. Anyways, those of you who don't have the speed, frankly won't cut it. Which is why that's exactly what you'll be tested on. Oh, the first 100 students that fulfill these requirements will pass today. Oh chaos, for about the third time in 20 minutes, Silver's heart stopped. 1,540 divided by 100, chances they win a 6.5% out of 100%. That was low, very, 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 very low. Silver gripped his shoulders and began to hyperventilate. No, 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 Silver whimpered and closed his eyes. If I don't pass, wait a minute, if he didn't pass, then what? His heart felt like it was locked on something, like if he couldn't do this, he couldn't help stop, or help what? Stop what from happening again? No, he would get it. Like Mr. Ozawa said. Silver subconsciously took in the rules and grabbed his targets and balls. Name of the game, hit 6 targets while avoiding all 3 of his lighting up. Silver heard Mera say something about opening and Silver gave a hum of confusion when the roof normally tore itself apart. Silver went wide-eyed and the walls crashed down, exposing a large open dirt world. What in the name of? Silver began with a mix of emotions and Izuku pulled his arm, dragging him into the open grounds. Silver was soon running with his classmates, excluding Bakugo, Kirishima, Kaminari, and Todoroki. Silver heard Izuku say something about a sports festival, and how everyone already knew their quirks, but not Silver's. A soft hum ran through his body and he froze. That energy. Deku. Silver looked behind him and the sounds around him muffled. A.N. Fun fact, only time Silver calls Izuku, Deku, is when isn't himself or is Ugent. The buzzer went off and Silver saw a bunch of kids pounce at them, but Silver absent-mindedly pushed them away. Izuku. Silver called again to get their team leader's attention. Izuku Midoriyaa. Silver shouted and his team all froze looking at him. Many opponents took that chance and threw the balls but they all froze, mid-air, Silver not going to have his team be distracted. Silver glared seriously at Deku, his amber eyes locked with Izuku's darker emeralds. A guy who looked sorta like a blue turtle threw rocks to someone else who muttered something stupid and the rocks burrowed underground. Silver never left Izuku's eyes as he raised his hand up and the rocks were pried out of the ground. Silver threw them back and blinked, breaking the gaze. Deku looked amazed and smiled. I'm sorry, I'll be right back. Silver said and Izuku's face fell. No. But we need to stick together. Deku cried and Silver growled. His face grew serious. There is something here that's more than the dumb test. Silver said strongly and closed his eyes. I don't care if you come or not, I'm just letting you know where I'm going. I'm headed east, towards that R. Silver yelped when the ground beneath him fractured and lifted up and down. Tremoring earrrrrrth. The black-haired kid from before yelled loudly and Silver took to the skies. His team was lost in the chaos, so Silver took the chance to escape without anyone noticing. He almost lost his concentration when Mera loudly announced someone, with a single attack, got 120 people out. Whoever that was, Silver wasn't planning to mess with them. Silver headed towards the forest, following the hum-like energy. It was faint, but Silver couldn't help but feel that it was wrong that it existed. At least that it was here, in a stupid test. Landing, Silver carefully ran towards the energy, knowing since he was in the middle of a test, there was a large chance he would confront someone. Finally, Silver reached the forest. Soft smells of leaves and greenery filled his nose as he slowed to a walk. The energy was very close now, he was almost there, but what was it? Silver froze as a thought crossed him. What if this was someone's quirk? No, Silver thought and continued, it doesn't belong here, it belongs with me. He had no idea why he mentally claimed this unknown energy, but it felt right-ish. It was so quiet, it almost felt normal, not like he was in the middle of a large test which he should probably work on. In the bushes was the energy source. A Chaos Emerald. Silver breathed as he reached down and picked up the large, glowing green gem. Wait, Chaos Emerald. A wave of fog was cleared as Silver froze and pure white obscured his vision. The flashback being too strong, too forcefully to ignore. A soft, almost inaudible gasp escaped his lips as he was taken to somewhere else, within a memory which had not happened long ago. It was a bright, clear day. The warmth of the sun relaxing him as he landed. Silver glanced up with a smile, shading his eyes from the sun, and chuckled seeing a bright red biplane fly overhead. Though his relaxation didn't last too long, being a random sharp pain filled his mind. Ow! Silver almost faltered his stance, knees threatening to buckle under him, and he shook his head with question, what was that? It was sudden and Silver winced, gripping his head as the pain returned. Stronger now, what in the name of C? Once again he was cut off as a feeling came from his gut. This didn't hurt, more being a move. Feeling, and he listened without hesitation. Silver stood up quickly, a weird sense filling the air. The hedgehog glanced behind him, seeing it was a busy time and the streets were alive with people. The ivory psychic muttered unheard curses and decided it was in his best interest, along with another gut feeling, that he moved into a less populated area. The pain in his head faded as he moved into an alleyway and he sighed. Of course his relief didn't last long though. A clay-like substance appeared out of nowhere, acting as a portal. Silver's quills lightly rose, not from the sudden appearance, but because mixed with the weird clay was mixed with the unmistakable Genesis portal. Silver growled, readying his power, and a worried voice echoing softly in his head. How would he close it? That clay was mixed with it. Silver didn't have long to puzzle though, as a tall, discolored thing formed. Its brain was seeable from on top of its head and it had like 9 eyes. Not only was it seemingly brain dead, it also had 4 arms, but the freakiest thing of all was the creature had obviously locked onto Silver. Silver's signature cyan color began to form but was quickly cut off when the pain returned, much, much worse. The teen screamed in pain before falling to his knees, his eyes shut with tears hiding the corners. The freaky creature picked up Silver, who was pretty much defeated from the immense pain, and made an odd roar, if you wanna call it that sound, and clenched around Silver's neck tightly. The clay dripped over his eyes and Silver hung limply in the creature's arms, his fight all drained from an unseeable attack. I have finally been able to do something that has been on my bucket list for a long time, now just to see what this alien can do, a voice said, echoing around as Silver blacked out from loss of oxygen. He held the emerald and let the soft, chaotic energy fill him, calming his nerves. What he just saw was very unnerving. Not that he had apparently been kidnapped recently, but that voice. It was so familiar, but not in a good way. Thinking of it oddly linked with All Might. Feeling more complete, and with a lot more questions, Silver looked up, remembering the test was still going on. A rumbling in the distance made Silver on high alert, and he placed the emerald in his pocket, heading back to his team he had not purposefully abandoned. Okay, semi-purposefully abandoned. Quickly, Silver dug his heels into the ground and with great speed, jumped up and flew towards the noise. Taking the test into mind again, newfound strength powered Silver as his ESP was on high alert for any of his team. He spotted 2 familiar kids behind a rock, Izuku and Uraraka. Unsure, Silver eyed the scene from the sky for a bit. Izuku had his arm towards Uraraka with a stern face on. Oh chaos. That wasn't Uraraka. Her face began to melt and she turned into more of a clay-like goop. Clay, goop, is this my kidnapper? Silver thought his a twisting gut feeling of fear and recondition, resisting the urge to hurl. He spotted Zero and the real Uraraka not too far away. The clay girl was naked. Silver quickly turned and fastly headed down towards his other team, who seemed to have an idea. Zero. Uraraka. Silver landed down and pointed towards Izuku. Izuku needs help. Silver decided not to mention how the girl looked now. Uraraka quickly filled him in on the plan and Silver nodded, helping Uraraka with any sick feelings. Zero called out to Uraraka and Silver, so they both showed themselves landing close to the girl, and Silver was green at her appearance. She wasn't ugly. He was a pure soul. The girl pouted and left, making Silver sigh with relief. Zero almost went after her, but Izuku stopped him. You three are really you right? Deku asked, and Silver nodded quickly, remembering Uraraka's face melt. Yeah, why? Zero asked and Izuku explained. Uraraka's face turned bright red and Zero began to shake. Deku, was she naked then too? Zero. Get back into your right mind, in the name of chaos. Silver shouted and slapped Zero in the face. Of course not, you idiot. Izuku would have known it wasn't Uraraka. She had a costume on. Silver pried Zero off Izuku and shook his head with a disgusted look. Everyone was behind the rock again. Anyways, how did you guys find me? It was perfect timing. Deku asked and Silver grinned. I had just finished doing what I needed to and I felt another tremble in the earth and followed the sight of rocks flying. I'm surprised you didn't see me flying above you when Uraraka's face melted. That was one of the worst sights I have ever seen. I saw Zero and Uraraka not too far away and warned them. They seemed to already have been coming, so yeah. Silver explained his part. Deku made a face, like a mix of disappointment and confusion. What were you even doing anyhow? You haven't passed, so it wasn't farming points. Great, how to explain without causing a whole thing? Maybe, he couldn't lie to Izuku, so maybe a half-truth could do for now. But, it felt so wrong. With heavy guilt, Silver reached into his pocket, but trembling in the dirt below made him quickly pull up empty-handed. I'll explain more later. I'm guessing a fight is going big somewhere nearby. I could easily pass, but I also want to have a little bit of a challenge. Silver thought and looked behind the rock for any opponents, plus I should stay and help my class as long as I can. Silver looked back at his team and Midoriya gave him a weird look. And Shoji says it's no use. Arg. 60 people have passed, only 40 spots left. Mera said over the speakers and Silver huffed. Zero spoke in a soft whisper. We are running out of time. This is bad. What do we do? Everyone turned to Izuku as he spoke. Yeah, I knew we were in trouble if we split, but at least we can do something about the group near us, and probably even make some points. Really? What are you thinking? Zero spoke what everyone was thinking and Deku's eyes became deep in thought. Chapter 5. The second part. Silver's ear twitched and he froze, still listening to the plan. Then Uraraka also heard it. Footsteps, do you hear that? She asked and Silver slowly nodded. I'll be a decoy. You guys look for, Midoriya began and Silver hovered over to him. His glove landed on his shoulder. I'm not letting you go alone. I fit in both categories. Deku looked at him, but your quirk. Nope, I'm going with you. Not an argument. Silver said. He wasn't sure why, but he was gonna do this. Fine, now, let's move. Izuku said and everyone got into positions. Silver quickly lifted into the air and began flying over everyone's heads like a certain annoying bee in a certain detective agency, throwing taunts and other various words and actions to gain the attention of his opponents. Zero called out to him saying to get out of the way. Quickly following orders, Silver did just that. Flying much higher than the snares, Silver blew a raspberry at the trapped opponents. He landed next to Izuku as Midoriya tapped out his opponents. I'm going to cut it close. Silver looked at Deku. What? You need to. Izuku once again began to argue and Silver chuckled. Lifting his hand, Silver's 6 balls were surrounded in a cyan aura. I could have one when I came in if I wanted. I know I can win, I just want to help my other teammates first. Silver lowered his hand and the balls were out of sight. Zero chuckled. Okay, but get yourself a spot before they are all gone. Yeah. We want to see you pass. Uraraka said and Silver smiled. Hovering above, Silver nodded. You'll see me there. He promised and took off looking for more of his class, also spotting Mr. Ozawa in the stands. Flying for a while, Silver almost got burnt. Impaled. Hit by Aoyama's naval laser. Silver spotted the boy below and dropped from his hold to help out his team. When he landed, he heard Aoyama say, now. You have to run. Not on my watch. Silver shouted and landed quickly, lifting the enemies into the air just enough for them not to move and still be able to hit their targets. Nice to see you guys. Izuku, Uraraka, and Sero just passed. You should join them. Silver smiled and winked, holding his enemies. And then, a giant flurry of birds headed towards the hovering enemies. Silver almost dropped the other entries at the sight. Silver heard Koda yell, "Thank you," to the birds, and Tokoyami hit them with his black abyss. Mineta threw sticky balls onto the floor, so Silver placed them down, knowing it was a lot of strain anyhow. Heigakuya used her warp refraction to blind them and everyone got their hits in, but Silver hit 4 targets, leaving the last one open. On the last one's open for Aoyama. Take these. Silver headed his balls to his teammate and smiled, "You deserve to win." The blonde Frenchie looked shocked and began to hesitate, so Silver lifted his hands, showing he would get his spot with the flying balls hovering over 6 spots. Aoyama took the remaining spots and passed. After everyone had clicked the balls, Silver threw his down on the targets and was the last one to pass. He smiled as his targets turned light blue and he shrugged. Silver heard Mera freak out over the speakers and Silver yelped and fell to his knees at the sudden loud noise. "Shut up, Mera!" Silver shouted at Mera and huffed, "Let's go, sorry." Silver nodded at the pouting people who lost and headed off toward Izuku. Once inside, Izuku was in his face, crying. "Why did you do that? You need to be more careful. You were literally the last person to pass." Deku screamed and Silver chuckled, feeling odd. "Ah, calm down, Izuku." Silver lightly shoved him off. "I like a challenge, it wouldn't have been fair otherwise." Silver smiled, showing it was okay, "I made it anyhow." "Just don't do that again," Uraraka said for Deku, and Silver nodded. After a few minutes everyone was watching the test arena and it exploded. Silver sorta expected this. He guessed something odd was gonna happen, but no one else did. It was a test to see how to deal with saving people. He had an odd feeling of reassurance in his chest and he quizzled himself, why did he feel so confident? It's just like Kaimo Ward, I wonder if they based it off that. Izuku said and glanced at Silver, who smiled. "I got this in the bag," he said, his mouth speaking before he could think. "I was just in something sorta like this." Silver chuckled, "If that's what you're talking about. Yeah, it was a mess and I was hurt pretty bad and hated the whole thing. Though All Might was helpful." He took a breath. He could do this, as long as he didn't mess it up and actually hurt them, dang. "Well, the thing is, son of Endeavor," Silver quickly turned to see the crazy guy from earlier, "I can't help but hate you both. You have changed a little since I last saw you, but you still have your father's eyes." Chaos, that was the wrong thing to say. Todoroki was his friend. "Excuse me, am I interrupting something?" Silver quickly cut in, "I heard you say something about eyes and want to talk to you, after you get to know Todoroki. Oh, and don't let me forget." His tone turned into a very mad one. "I will chaos spear your fluffy collared butt all the way to Space Colony Arc if you insult my friends again, and I will pull Iblis and Ifrit both all the way here and find the stupid GUN truck and throw you to the Arc with them. Got that?" Silver was pretty mad. Yeah, he was known for being the one who's all like, "Hey, why don't we talk it out?" But yes, he did a, "If you mess with my friends I kill you" side. Silver was so much in Yoarishi's face, their noses touched and he had an entire other mouthful of bitter words and threats that he would for sure fulfill when Izuku pulled him off. Silver's face was bright red with anger and he glared at Yoarishi's face with the strongest, "Get in line" face he could and huffed. He wasn't ever sure what he was doing at this point. Half of what he just yelled made no sense. "Either you learn to get along with him or you stay away from him, cause I will throw you to the moon." Aye, Silver had so much he wanted to say, but instead he bit his tongue and growled, "You know, if you want to be a hero, do the right thing." Holding back a kick, Silver turned away with his eyes closed. "Nice meeting you, Yoashiri, now don't you have a class to get to? I'll be seeing you." Not looking back, Silver lifted a hand and waved behind him absently. Yoashiri seemed shocked into silence and Izuku and Todoroki were both shell-shocked, because they knew Silver and that's not how he acted. Yoashiri walked off without saying anything and Todoroki looked at Silver. "How did you, why did you," he began and Silver looked at him with a soft look. Silver shrugged at him, "I just went with my gut." He looked towards the screen. "We should focus on the test, but remember, I will throw him to the moon if he says that again. Seriously, heroes only hate villains and you are one of the farthest things from a villain." Silver watched as Deku sprouted the words, "This looks bad." From his mouth to the HUC actor. "Great. This looks bad. Points off your score." He cried and Silver groaned. He didn't need this, but then again, he was in it for the long run. "The first thing you should do is see how bad my injuries are and if I can walk." Everyone else around him looked scared while Silver just stared at Izuku in annoyance. He didn't mean to, just, "Come on, I'm breathing kinda weird aren't I? And didn't you even notice I'm bleeding from the head?" People with hero licenses should be able to judge a victim's condition in an instant. All good points. Your gross lack of training is all too apparent right now. You better shape up and pay attention, newbies. You're not just here to provide aid. Until the police and firefighters show up, you need to exercise authority and make sure this all goes off smoothly. Think about the victims here. They must be terrified. Silver blinked in memory on how he felt when he woke up under rocks crushing him, no memory and drained of all his energy. Yeah, terrified was definitely on the list. There are many aspects to being a hero. But take note. There is one thing to keep in mind above all else: whoever needs saving is having the worst day of their lives. What the HUC actor said struck true, and the first thing you said was, "This looks bad." Seriously. Okay, now that he explained it, it was even more of a burn. Izuku growled and slapped his face, making Silver stare at him like he was crazy. Hey. It's fine. Silver smiled at his attempt, but if you really look at the situation, it wasn't really fine. The HUC actor looked at him with a, "You can do better," face while thinking about it and went back into acting. Screaming suddenly made Silver flinch. Over there. My grandpa. Izuku bent down as the actor continued to sob. Don't you worry. We'll definitely save him. I can carry this boy to the first aid by myself. You guys, go on without me. Silver glared at him with a, really? Look, you forgot about his grandpa already. Silver said in a flat tone, then looking at the actor treating him like a real kid, Silver said with a soft hushed voice, "Okay, Izuku will take you to first aid, but before you go please point to your elder." The child pointed behind him crying loudly and Silver nodded with a soft smile. He isn't too deep, I can deal with him. I'll catch up with you, Izuku. Everyone else took their groups and ran off while Izuku kept saying the same line over and over again. It will be alright. It will be alright. It kinda seemed like he was saying that to himself. Silver saw Uraraka stare at Izuku for a bit. You okay? He asked and focused on the rocks and slowly lifted them, and she nodded then ran off. Silver lifted all the rocks and placed them aside, seeing the old man in question, and he was knocked out. Quickly deciding that the best way to travel was flying to make sure it wasn't bumpy. Gently he wrapped his cyan-hued power around the knocked out elder and quickly headed towards Izuku. He saw Izuku still running and the aid station not too far up ahead. Giving a small psychic dash, Silver easily caught up to Izuku. Izuku cradled the boy like a mother would a young child. We're almost to a safe space, don't you worry. Wow, that was fast, Silver. Not a problem. He is unconscious. I also believe his right arm is broken. He may have fractured a lung and has a minor head injury. Otherwise, he is okay and breathing shallowly. Silver hovered close to Izuku and gave the report. A station with a white flag laid up ahead, and Silver smiled. There are so many, Izuku said and slowly walked up to the station. A girl ran up and checked up on the HUC child, then the elder, and pointed to a place on the right. The boy will be okay, this man though will need a bit more treatment. Take the boy to the right, man on the left. Got it. Both Silver and Izuku said at the same time. Gently placing the man down, Silver sighed with relief that he wasn't dead. He placed the old man in a careful position, yet should be comfortable enough for him not to wake up screaming. Silver met back up with Izuku and landed, then a sudden wave hit him. It was like intuition, but stronger. He gasped at the sudden action and gripped his head and bent down, closing his eyes. Izuku said something in a hurried, worry-filled tone along with the confused HUC actor, but their voices seemed far away and muffled. In less than a few seconds, Silver felt as if the world around him was tipping and turning crazily. His ears pinned back as he attempted to steady himself, but Silver felt as if the ground below him had suddenly turned into quicksand, or a vacuum void. All the muffled noise and gentle or vigorous, probably vigorous but it felt gentle, shaking suddenly cut off as he seemingly fell through the void. Silver knew his eyes were closed, yet somehow he saw an Orca. His red eyes glared straight at Silver and his words were clear as diamond. Tell me, wannabe heroes, can you rescue people and fight at the same time? His voice was low and ominous. Flashes of numerous men with guns of sorts running at them, shooting clay. Faces hidden by freaky masks, and Izuku saying in disbelief, "That's Gang Orca." The words rang in his head as the horrible head pain faded into a light headache as everything came back to him. The voices no longer muffled and the shaking was a lot rougher than he thought. Silver loosened his hold on his head and blinked into reality. That was new. And hurt really bad, but it was like, Silver. Ah, shoot. Izuku's voice came in clearly next to him. Silver guessed he had been the one shaking him. The HUC actor spoke up next. Stop shaking him. He obviously passed out, and you're the hero. What now? Silver felt a small spark of anger inside him. The HUC actor was using him as a test for Izuku. Not cool. Silver alerted them that he was awake by moving a little and opening his eyes all the way. Hey, calm down Izuku, I'm alright. Silver groaned out with a slightly pained tone. Silver. Hey, are you sure? I'm not sure you should, Izuku began, but Silver's sudden alert face cut him off. The strong feeling still laid in his gut. That was going to happen, he was sure of it. Silver quickly stood up and turned towards where he saw Gang Orca as the strong feeling rapidly increased by the second. He wasn't sure why, but he knew it was gonna happen. He felt his powers act on their own as the feeling flared to a top high and his ESP caused a shield to fly up around the first aid just in time for 3 massive explosions. There he was. Tell me you wanna be Heros, can you rescue people and fight at the same time? Gang Orca said, and Silver's breath hitched. Gang Orca. Silver and Izuku said at the same time, and Izuku gave Silver a confused face. Everyone. This is part of the exam. Izuku yelled in his ear and Silver glared at him with a, don't ever do that Argon face. Izuku immediately gave a sheepish look and nodded, while the others thought about this and nodded, I knew it. Silver whispered and the shield went down. What? Deku looked at him curiously and Silver got in a fight stance. Silver's hands grew bright cyan, never mind it, I'll tell you later. Izuku went up with Silver but Shindo ran past him saying, I'll fire away at the henchmen, you get them to safety. Izuku nodded and Silver growled, not going to work. He muttered and watched Shindo headbutt Gang Orca and pass out, told ya. A single rear guard to hold us back. You have underestimated, Gang Orca said, and Silver borrowed a small bit of energy from the Chaos Emerald in his pocket. 2 different ways to face this situation, he could face head-on, or use a semi-sneak attack. If he could catch Gang Orca off guard, Silver then could get an advantage. He was a pro, so that would be hard, but he could do this. A blast of ice came out of nowhere and the Orca villain turned around and blasted the oncoming ice. Silver took this chance, lifting a large handful of his goons and closing their mouths so their shoutouts of confusion and warnings would be silenced. Silver threw them at the back of Gang Orca. Chaos control. Silver shouted and slowed down time just enough to make Gang Orca punch himself in the face and lock his blast. Facing his back, Silver roundhouse kicked him and dodged the oncoming attack. Silver side jumped around Gang Orca trying to distract, and once he came around to Todoroki an idea struck him. Throw some fire. Silver yelled, I have a plan. Todoroki looked hesitant then nodded and made a fireball the size of a tennis ball, tossing it lightly, his face slightly worried and unsure, to Silver who caught it in his power no problem. The wind began to pick up but Silver paid no mind, not even when someone above him yelled. I'm gonna blow you evildoers away. Oh good, Yoshiri. Chapter 6. Final fight and scores. Still paying no mind to the other attacks, Silver hid the fire behind him and gave the most taunting face he could. Can't hit me if you wanted to, see boy. Silver teased and pulled on various parts on his face, and people say I have weird hair. Just one hit, that's all he needed, come on. Give it your best shot. At this rate I'm sure a snail can shoot better. That really ticked him off, you little brat. Gang Orca gave a sonic wave again and Silver stuck out his tongue. Chaos control. Appearing behind the large sea person, Silver gave a direct hit to his head with the flaming ball and jumped back, just barely dodging a high kick Gang Orca gave, and Silver landed unharmed. Miss me. Miss me. Now you gotta kiss me. Silver taunted and tapped his chin for a second, that is, if you can catch me. Silver stalled for Yoshiri and Todoroki to bust a move. Silver then gave a flat stare along with an annoyed sigh when he saw wind going upwards and flame splitting into 2 thin streaks hitting none of their targets. Then he heard them arguing. Wow, way to go idiots. Then Silver saw a goon shot Todoroki with the grey cement and Silver rolled his eyes. Throwing all the goop back at the goons. You idiots. Silver yelled, I don't know WHO in the name of Chaos Endeavor is, but I get it. Nobody likes him. Stop hating on Todoroki for being his son and work together for the love of life. SHOTO is a good kid and I really hate how you're treating my friend. Silver lifted up himself and they completely ignored the white-haired hero. They both took aim again and did the same stupid cursed attack again, this time the flames aiming at Shindo. Izuku lifted the paralyzed boy up and jumped just in time, glaring at the bickering duo. Dang it. What are you two doing? Izuku yelled, getting the attention of the bickering duo by being somehow louder than Silver. Silver's ESP kicked in just in time and he dodged another sonic wave attack. Gang Orca gave off 2 more blasters hitting Yoshiri and Todoroki and Silver growled. The goons ran off and Gang Orca turned around giving another sonic wave along with a punch, aiming to get Silver out too. No one hurts the bickering idiots. Silver yelled and glared at Gang Orca, psychic wave. Silver aimed straight at Gang Orca in any possible way he could dodge, hitting him square in the face. Silver felt the heat increase and the same with the wind, I get it. They are trying to trap Gang Orca. Good thing I'm used to the heat. Wait what? Silver thought and shook off the confusion and began laying down attack after attack. Gang Orca began dumping water on him and Silver kicked it away. Panting, Silver pulled more energy from the emerald and focused hard. Gang Orca was going to use a sonic wave again, so Silver mixed his power and the emeralds to get the strongest attack he could. So what's your next move? Gang Orca shouted and Silver saw Izuku not too far away. Silver could have easily finished this a while ago, but there was nothing he could tie him up with, so the only option was to keep fighting. Snapping his cuffs off quickly, a cyan sky blue aura surrounded him. Izuku, cover for me! Silver yelled, grabbing the attention of the hero and shouted before Gang Orca released his big ol' blast, Psychic Blast. Knocking Gang Orca into a large rock right as he shot the sonic wave. Silver yelped as the wave skimmed him and he fell, panting heavily. His eyes threatened to close and he forced himself to stay awake. Izuku quickly ran up and kicked just as Gang Orca made an effort to head towards Silver, Todoroki, and Yoshiri. Midoriya, Gang Orca said and the buzzer went off. Yeah. So at this time all the members of HUC who had been deployed have been rescued from the disaster zone. Mera said over the speakers and Silver sighed with relief. Now the provisional licensing exam is officially over. We will tally up the points and announce the results here in the arena. Anyone with injuries, please head to the infirmary. The rest of you are free to change clothes and are free to wait wherever you like. Silver was in and out of consciousness, but he heard Gang Orca give his praise. That tornado of flame was an inspired attack, Silver's large-scale move already was enough, and Midoriya's surprise attack, we may have lost. Silver gave a small grin. Can someone help me? He couldn't fight anymore to Sleep, who was calling his name in a very, very tempting way, and he finally fell into a soft black void. Slowly, Silver opened his eyes and found he was in the stands with Mr. Aizawa and Ms. Joke. Good job, you did better than I expected for only training a few weeks before this. Mr. Aizawa said and Silver hummed in confusion. Good job for what again? He asked and Ms. Joke laughed. She smiled. You passed. And a nice light show. Wait a minute. Did you say a few weeks before this? She stared at Mr. Aizawa, who smiled proudly. Silver froze upon seeing his teacher smile. Yes. He said and stood up. They are passing out the papers, so you should head down to your class. Mr. Aizawa said and Silver nodded. Yes sir. Silver jumped off the stands and Ms. Joke yelped in surprise and Silver flew down towards Izuku. Hello. Thanks for covering for me. Silver said and Izuku turned around. Deku smiled largely. You did amazing out there. And that final attack. That was awesome. It took a lot of energy too. Silver laughed and double-checked he had his cuffs again before sighing. Thank you sir. Silver said and grabbed his sheet of paper and Izuku explained how they were rated and Silver smiled. 91 points. Mostly took away points for slight carelessness I had with the final move, and when Todoroki and Yoshiri were bickering I was kinda just standing there. Wow. Yaoyorozu only had 94. Not too far behind Silver. Uraraka said happily and Silver nodded with a smile. I guess this is kinda your thing. Silver looked over and saw Todoroki and Yoshiri with the same sad look. You okay guys? Silver asked softly, guessing they failed. Todoroki looked at Silver. Good job back there. You did so well. Fighting like a true hero. I admire that in you. Yoshiri yelled and Silver flinched and laughed nervously. Izuku told Silver that they didn't pass and Silver sighed. I kinda guessed. Mera had been speaking, but what really caught Silver's attention was when Mera said, those of you who lost, there is no time for you to feel bitter about your loss. Instead, we offer 3-month special course and passing an individual test. We plan to still give you your licensees. Silver smiled largely and looked at Todoroki and Yoshiri. You guys can do it. He said and they nodded happily. We'll root for you. Iida said, holding Mineta weirdly, and Silver shrugged it off. Deku, are you crying? Uraraka asked and Silver turned to see Izuku holding his license with a death grip and tears in his eyes. Silver chuckled and Izuku gave a slightly embarrassed shuffle. Well, yeah. It's a lot. Silver glanced at his own card with a rather happy smile of his own. The picture of him was of him with one hand up glowing cyan and the other off to the side. A soft smile and excited amber orbs were printed on his face and he chuckled. Silver snapped out of his trance when a loud voice called, Hey! Hey! Looking up, Silver saw Yoshiri running towards them. Todoroki. I'll see you at the special course. But here's the thing. Honestly, nothing has changed. I still don't like you. Sorry. That's all for now. Silver gave a flat stare and sighed. Oh well. You can lead a horse to water but can't make it drink, I guess. Karishma looked confused. That was nice of him, I guess. We'll just make the best of it. Todoroki said and nodded at Yoshiri. Aoyama spoke up. Interesting, he is someone who is both bold and sensitive. I admire such joie de vivre. Silver looked at him. What does the even mean? his joy in being a hero. Aoyama answered, happy that someone wanted to understand a bit of French. Once Silver stepped out of the bus, he went to his room and fell right asleep. The emerald in his pocket slowly regained its power and helped Silver also regain his own power. Sometime in the middle of the night, his dream took a random turn along with a horrible headache. You got your quirk from All Might, didn't you? He gave you his power. Bakugo said to Izuku, and the background began to set in. Moonlight played in their hair and shadowed buildings hid behind them. A faint breeze flew away from the seance and Bakugo began to speak again. No words came out though, at least, not that Silver heard. Izuku stood in front of Bakugo with the most nervous and determined expression Silver had ever seen. They were both in their night clothes, making Silver wonder what was going on until Silver heard Bakugo speak again, lifting his hand. You and I are going to settle this, right here, right now. Silver woke up with a start, sweaty and his head pounding. Those words and the feeling in his gut, it was like the other one. He unlocked a new part of his power, visions. Aka, foresight, but this was bad. Izuku and Bakugo were going to fight. Where? When? Why? Well, he kinda knew why. Silver got up and decided the only way to calm his nerves was to take a little midnight walk. Then if he saw them he could stop them and maybe learn something new along the way. Following his instincts, he walked with no specific destination in mind and took a deep breath. He looked at his hands. Would he always have a headache with his visions? A large explosion and breaking glass sounded ahead and Silver looked up to see a large plume of smoke. Kicking into high gear, Silver began to run towards it but had no idea how exactly to get to them and where they were. Instincts and especially took over and he took a sharp right, running up a tree trunk and jumping into a building. Saving his power for his classmates, Silver ran on top of buildings until he heard Bakugo. You were always behind me. Our whole lives. You were stuck to me, I couldn't get rid of you. The explosion boy said in a growly tone, no matter how much I tried, you kept coming back. Silver looked around for the pinpoint location of where it was coming from but the buildings surprisingly echoed his voice around. Listen to me. Izuku yelled and an explosion resounded afterwards. Finally Silver saw right where they were and ran over, anger giving a little push to his energy. Stop running. Stand up and fight. We both admired him, so why? Why? Tell me. Silver was right above both of the fighting pair but froze when Bakugo fell back. Izuku's good heart came into play and he ran up to Bakugo with his hand out. Hey. Are you alright? His hand was slapped away. Don't you dare worry about me. Attack me. Why won't you fight back? Bakugo now sounded broken, and like all his stress finally poured over. Why did I end up having to chase after someone who was always so far behind me? Why did a dang small fry like you get strong and become the #1 hero's sidekick, his favorite? You got so much better. And I destroyed All Might. I admired him so much, but it's because of me he ended up losing his power. Silver didn't know what he was talking about, but he felt Bakugo's pain through his words. If I had been stronger, if I hadn't been kidnapped by villains, then it never would have happened. Bakugo was crying, literally crying. All Might knows it's my fault but hasn't said anything. Everyone has to know though. I can't get it out of my head. It's constantly playing on loop. So what the heck am I supposed to do? Silver froze, solid. Somehow, he could relate to Bakugo. Obviously he didn't remember but he still felt it. A scar on his heart, someone he cared for so much, so deeply, but couldn't save. His breath began to waver and tears made their way into his eyes. He knew this feeling too well. This scar, hurting pain that had been pushed away but always resurfaced. Someone he couldn't save, couldn't live without, and it was his fault. He didn't even remember him and that hurt him more than anything. His hands shakily wrapped around each other and he fell to his knees, the pressure in his eyes finally too much and the tears overflowed and he softly cried. Silver heard him begin to fight again, but all his energy, his motive to stop them, was gone. He just softly cried on the roof, his pain that had been for so long pushed down, finally being dealt with. He heard Izuku being beaten up, blasted thoroughly. After a few more minutes, his pain and sorrow was replaced with a more lightened feeling. Like all the weight in his life, had melted off. Silver heard Izuku kick the fight up a notch and the wind picked up. That's the reason I kept chasing after you. Izuku yelled and Silver flinched. What had he missed? When he got up and looked at the fight, he saw Izuku and Bakugo heading at each other with hardcore speed. They jumped up and Silver wiped his tears and got himself into gear. Just before Silver made a move, saw All Might farther along and decided if he intervened he would only get in trouble too. He made a force field to block the force and waited until Bakugo said he had won the fight. Looking over, Silver saw All Might come out of the smoke. Stop this. Right now. Both of you. he said and glanced in Silver's direction, who flinched when All Might looked at him. I didn't notice before, but I should have. It's too late. Why did you choose Deku? Bakugo said, it started when the sludge villain happened, so why him? All Might sighed and looked at Silver. Come on out, Silver. I know you heard. Hesitantly, Silver peeked his head out and nodded before floating down. Bakugo froze seeing Silver and same with Izuku. Silver stepped to the side and locked his eyes to the ground, feeling guilty he didn't act when he had the chance. He was powerless. But still more heroic than anyone else. I knew you were strong, that much was obvious. You were someone who could already fight. So that's why I decided he should have a chance to stand in the ring. All Might explained and Silver glanced at Deku with understanding eyes. But now you know I'm weak too. I always wanted to be like you, which meant being as strong as possible. But look what I did to you. Bakugo said in that one again broken sounding voice. You are strong, Bakugo. I was always going to lose my power. There is nothing you can do to change it. I focused too much on your physical strength and overlooked what was important. All Might said and hugged Bakugo, who stayed like that for a few minutes and pushed it away. You two fit each other, and if you work together you can become the ultimate heroes. Dang it, that's not what I wanted to hear. Bakugo said and sat down, and All Might looked at Silver. You, Bakugo said to Izuku, don't you dare lose to me ever again. Izuku nodded and Bakugo sighed, so who knows about you two? Recovery Girl, and Nezu. As far as students go, you and Silver. All Might said and looked at Bakugo again. Unlike Deku, I can keep my mouth shut. I won't tell anyone. Bakugo said and Izuku looked at Silver hopefully. Neither will I. Silver said and raised his right hand showing he promised. Chapter 7. Secrets, and House Arrest. I don't deserve this. I should be on my hands and knees begging for you to keep this a secret, thank you. All Might said and Silver chuckled upon thinking about that. I'm not doing it for you, it would just be a real pain if this messed stuff up. Bakugo said and Silver shrugged. I'll tell you what happened between me and young Midoriya now, it's only fair. All Might said and everyone got ready for a long story. One large explanation later, because you know I'm too lazy to rewrite 30 minutes of solid talking, not only that they kinda skipped it as well because everyone already knows how it goes, yet I can somehow write the next long part. You idiot, what were you thinking when you first told me about it? If this got out people would start wondering where the power is. Bakugo said and Izuku gave an annoyed stare. How did you know, Silver? Izuku decided to change the subject and Silver froze before chuckling slightly nervous. He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. I guess it's trade secret. Might wanna stop before heading back so I can explain. Silver sighed mentally thinking on where to begin. All Might gave a confused look and turned around, stopping. Bakugo groaned and Izuku tilted his head with confusion. Well, first let's say the week of training has leveled up my abilities and now I can see small glimpses into the future, but it hurts really bad afterwards and they come randomly. Silver said and Izuku's eyes widened. I was sleeping when it happened so it came in my dream. I heard Bakugo say Izuku got his quirk from All Might. It was supposed to be a guess but Izuku didn't respond so it was truth. I woke up and tried to find you guys with the intentions of stopping your fight before things got out of hand but, his hands burrowed into his pockets, I'm not exactly sure, but when I heard Bakugo explain how he felt and ask what he was supposed to do, a pain from long ago came up. I don't even know what happened, but I just knew how he felt. Kinda. I knew that I lost someone, couldn't save them, and it was because of me. It felt even worse, like heavy guilt since I couldn't even remember their name or face. I guess I have been pushing it down for so long that now since I can't remember what happened, I can't anymore. Izuku nodded with a look of understanding. Wow, I'm sorry. Nah, it's okay. I was going to stop you guys but ended up just crying on the roof. I'm honestly surprised you didn't see me, Izuku, flying through the air like you were. Silver sighed. Anyhow, since you shared a rather large-scale secret with me, I'll do same to you, at least as much as I know. All Might looked confused. What do you mean? Bakugo glared at Silver. Why is everyone hiding secrets from me? Silver gave him a, really? face and sighed. Well, I'll try to explain as best as I can. Remember when I yelled your name during the exam and ran off? Silver said to Izuku, who blinked and nodded. Well, that's when I found a Chaos Emerald. It helped me remember what happened and how I get here, but not a lot more. Silver said and pulled out the large green gem. I expect you guys not to tell anyone cause this is pretty major. I'll be straightforward, I'm from a different world. Silver let them have their reactions out before continuing. Bakugo just looked mad. Don't make up nonsense lies. Izuku was quiet thinking about it while All Might looked scared and confused. What? The retired pro exclaimed. Silver blinked at the retired hero's reaction and shrugged. I'm not lying. See, I have many strands of proof, think about it. He doesn't have a family, remember? Plus he always seems to subconsciously referencing the emerald because he always says, chaos, when things are bad, plus when he was yelling at Yoshiri he was saying really weird and seemingly random things. Izuku said and slowly nodded, it seems to fit everything so far. A.N. How are you so chill about it? Izuku. Who says I wasn't freaking out internally? Me. Then how did the stupid emerald help you? How did you know it was here? Bakugo huffed, slight interest shown in his face as he looked away. Silver took in a breath and closed his eyes with the emerald in hand. Honestly, I'm just going with my gut. There is a subconscious explanation that I also will be learning from. Silver shrugged and began, there are 7 Chaos Emeralds, they hold UN. Silver hesitated looking worried at Bakugo, don't take it okay. They hold unlimited power, turning thoughts into power. The more you have the more powerful you become. Silver sighed and his grip on the emerald slightly tightened as the 3 men looked at the emerald with expressions from mild awe to slight horror and amazement to looking brain dead. Are you okay, Izuku? Silver asked with fear and the green-haired boy just stared at the gem. That's insane, he muttered and began spilling his thoughts and questions about the powered gem and Silver blinked. Anyhow, only certain people can conduct chaos control, also very complicated machines can. But I'm one of the few users. Silver stopped with a puzzled look for a minute. Anyway, I'll tell you guys how I got here, or at least all of what I remember. Silver shrugged and began another 30-minute explanation. Another long explanation later, because this time, I really am just lazy puts on sunglasses asterisk rips them off and you all already know. Wow, that's crazy. All Might said and they began their way back to Aizawa again, hedgehog with a quirk. Silver chuckled, and that's only one memory, told ya it was a trade secret. But please don't tell anyone. Bakugo sighed harshly, yeah. I got it. You would be taken to the science center immediately, Izuku said and Silver flinched, are you forever going to be human now? No thanks. Silver froze at Izuku's question then began walking again, I don't know. But thanks for understanding. Even though it's not a lot to go on. I'm still like you guys, so please don't act weird around me, Silver muttered with his head down and Izuku smiled. It's alright. I can't believe that you're from another world though, Izuku blinked, will you tell us more when you remember? Silver shrugged, sure, but I have no idea when that will be. A.N. Perhaps chapter 10. Hint. You fought the night you finished the licensing exam. I'm glad to see you guys have so much energy. Mr. Aizawa said while holding the long scarf around Silver, Izuku, and Bakugo. I didn't fight. It's not my fault. I came to help and may have gotten sidetracked but I wasn't really involved. Silver thought, gagging through the restraints. Aizawa. Wait, hold up with those restraints. All Might to the rescue, it's my fault that they spared in the first place. Your fault. And how is that? Mr. Aizawa asked and Silver just yelled his thoughts loudly in his head. I didn't spare. I didn't fight. I was there to stop it but acted too late. I'm innocent. Mostly. Silver didn't struggle or use his quirk cause that would just make things worse, but he really needed to breathe. Can't breathe, I'm going to pass out again. Please loosen your scarf, Mr. Aizawa. Chaos please. Was he really going to make Silver pass out as a punishment? He did that too much already. And that was just mean because Izuku and Bakugo seemed to be able to breathe fine. What if he doesn't see me pass out and accidentally kills me? Silver thought with worry but his thoughts began to slow along with his quiet wheezing. Please loosen your scarf, I can't breathe, Silver thought and tried a very hard psychic move he rarely used, telepathy. His mind providing the helpful advice to him just in time. Thanks to his training though, it was easier than normal, but he still didn't like to use it because it freaks others out, and he doesn't like to invade personal privacy. All Might was whispering something in his ear and he saw Mr. Aizawa look at him with slight shock and the scarf's tight grip loosened around his neck just enough to allow air into the pipes again and Silver took a quiet, but large breath in and out. Thank you, Silver thought and used telepathy again, this time with the teacher facing him. All Might stopped whispering in his ear and all the restraints fell and Eraserhead gave a confused look at Silver. He guessed Aizawa was trying to figure out how Silver spoke without using his mouth. I understand that they felt like they had to break the rules. But this isn't something that I can just ignore. There must be a suitable punishment. Who threw the first punch? He looked around and Bakugo rolled his eyes. I did. He said and Izuku sighed. I went pretty hard too, Izuku said and Aizawa looked at Silver. Silver answered truthfully, I saw this coming and I acted too late to stop them. I didn't break anything or fight either of them. You're all on house arrest. 4 days for Bakugo, 3 days for Mirio and 1 day for Silver. Since you didn't help in any way. He glared at Silver who nodded quickly. During that time you will clean all the common areas in the dorms morning and night. Plus I want a written apology. If your injuries need to be checked out, go to the nurse's office, but don't expect the help from the old woman's quirk. You will find a way to heal yourselves. Aizawa said sternly before sighing, that's all. Go. In just one day, I have been left behind. That's what you're thinking, isn't it, Mr. House Arrest? Iida said as Silver exited the elevator. Hey. Don't call me that, that's mean. Izuku said, hey Iida, what's a work study? I'm sorry but we can't tell you. We have been forbidden by the teachers, you hear that, Bakugo? Oh, and Silver. Iida said and Silver shrugged. Half of what you say is a mystery to me anyhow, this isn't really anything new. Silver said and yawned, man, I don't know what has gotten into me, he muttered and picked up some of the trash bags Izuku was tying up. Silver and Izuku went out to throw away the trash. What is a work study? Izuku muttered and Silver shrugged. I don't know. He slurred sleepily and tripped on his shoe and face planted. Ouch, he muttered and hurried to get up and catch up to Izuku but froze when he saw a head in the wall. Ha! Trash, am I right? He said and Silver blinked before slowly processing what was going on. What are you two doing? You know you can just throw away the food trays with the burnables, don't you? Izuku seemed to understand that he was supposed to freak out long before Silver. Yeah. He said, sweating with fear. The head nodded and melted away, causing Izuku to look at Silver. You saw that to right? The head in the wall. Yeah. Silver said before finally understanding that wasn't normal. Why a minute? Why waste hairy head and fall? Who should waste hat? It wasn't an illusion because Iyusuito so fadenthina miafshas. Silver yelped with fear and Izuku stiffly shrugged. Translation for fast fearful Silver. Wait a minute. Why was there a head in the wall? Whose head was that? It wasn't an illusion because you saw it too, so what in the name of chaos? The head appeared again on the ground and Silver threw the trash at it and jumped back. The hair on his neck rose and it blinked. Ow, you know I'm not gonna bite, right? So you two must be the excitable first years. Haha, I can tell that was a freaky surprise for you. Kinda sorry about that. Gotta admit I did pop up here cause I thought you'd be shocked, though you have fast reflexes. He looked at Silver who was panting with a hand over his heart. What in the world are you? Izuku asked, taking a step forward. The head laughed, not a bad question there my friend. I admit, sometimes I even weird myself out. You know, once in a blue moon. But don't worry, you're gonna find out who I am soon enough. I'm just glad it looks like you both have the fighting spirit. Don't do that. Silver yelled near tears. Popping out of a wall is one thing, but the floor. Chaos gives me a break. The head blinked. You see, the truth is people are talking about you three, so I came to see what the fuss was about. And then he melted away again. Izuku looked around for the head again while Silver picked up the trash with his telekinesis while his ESP was on guard high. Okay, what just happened? Izuku asked and Silver shook his head. I don't have the slightest. Let's just hurry up and take out the trash before it appears again. Silver said and began to run to the trash. Wait for me. Izuku said and ran after Silver, fear biting and making Silver a bit faster. This has got to be the best reaction I have written for Silver yet. And I have 21 chapters already written out. So yeah, that's saying something. The first day back, Silver felt all eyes on him as he put his apology, neatly folded and labeled, on the teacher's desk. The note said, I'm sorry for causing trouble and not helping, or notifying a teacher. I have learned from this experience and it will grow me as a student and a hero. I won't let it happen again. And he immediately wished Izuku could come back to class soon. Silver still hadn't learned what a work study was yet, and waited until Izuku was done with his house arrest, and when he was, Silver yelped at his entrance. Why in the world, how in the name of physics did he have steam coming out his nose? Mr. Azirawa appeared behind him. Time to take your seats everyone. Now that Mirio is back we will go into more detail about the work studies. Go ahead and come in. I'll have people who have experienced them firsthand explain. Silver looked over and saw the door open and he almost threw all the desks at who he saw with fright and instinct. It was him, and a girl and another boy, but it was him, the face guy. Honestly he looked a lot better with a body. These three are third years at UA, they are also at the top of our student body. Mr. Aizawa explained. Silver made a confused face as he thought, wah, they are making a body made of students. That's just creepy, and Silver glanced at Deku and saw he looked almost as freaked out as him. You may know them as the Big Three. That was a very original name. But then again, he didn't really have room to talk. The face they saw before looked at them both. Silver froze and mouthed, I'm sorry. Let's start with Amajiki. Mr. Aizawa said, and Silver blinked at the boy looking downwards. He was shy, definitely shy. I can't, you two go on. Even if I imagine them as potatoes, I still see their human bodies and my mind is blank, my mouth is dry. I wanna go home. He turned around and faced the wall as if he had done something bad. Oh come on Amajiki. You gotta have the heart of a lion. Not a kitten. The navy blue-haired girl said, you know, even though you're human, get what I mean? She turned to the class. This is our kitten, Tomoki Amajiki. And hi. My name is Neja Hado. I'm supposed to talk about work studies. You first years have a really exciting time ahead of you. Hado blinked with confusion. Hey wait, hold on. She bent down by Shoji. Why are you wearing a mask? Is it because you're feeling sick? Or just trying to look cool? Shoji was about to give an answer when she hopped up. Oh wow. And you must be Todoroki. Am I right? How did you get that big burn on your face? She turned around. And Ashito. If your horns break off, you think you'll grow new ones. Can you wiggle them? She looked at Mineta. Mineta. Are those balls your hair or what? I don't get it. She jumped and looked at Sue. Oh. Oh. Asui. You're a tree frog, not a gross toad, right? Oh, there is so much I want to know about every one of you. Let's have a Q&A. She said, smiling, and then she spotted Silver and he instantly wanted to be like Amajiki. Hide, aren't you that kid who was in the fight in Kamino Ward? Where are you wearing these? They are really blocky and oh. Why do you always wear gloves? Why do they have circles in them? And are your boots heavy? Why is your hair so long like mine? Please tell me. I wanna know. She said up in Silver face and he fell backwards in his chair. Mr. Ozawa looked at Hado with an evil in a way look. This is completely irrational. Oh. Don't worry Eraserhead. I'm up next and'll get the audience refocused. He smiled and said, the future's gonna be good. Silver asked and he sighed. Awful. That's your part guys. Well, crabs. My call and response totally failed. He laughed and Silver sat up again only to fall back upon seeing Hado was still at his desk. Okay, you guys look like you have no idea what's going on. I guess we are just third years that just showed up in your classroom to explain a program that's completely voluntary. I can see why you're confused by that. This new batch of students has proven to be so darn energetic, so you guys must not have a sense of humor. That's why my joke didn't land. When were we going to learn his name? Hado looked at him and Amajiki turned to look at him as well. Don't do it. Heads up. The rad new plan is all you first years fight me at once. The man said and Silver peeked up with utter confusion. Well, if you want to experience the way we feel, then this is a pretty rational way of doing it. Right, Eraserhead. Rational. Mr. Ozawa sighed. Do whatever you want. Next thing they knew, they were in gym gamma in their gym suits. Silver blinked and saw the guys stretching at the front of the class. Is he for real? Karashima asked. Oh yeah. Totes real. Totes. Does he mean tots? Tots real. Of course, they are food, but what does food have to do with this? Amajiki was facing the gym wall. Mirio, you're impossible. Imagine how bad it would look if some of them can't recover. No one wants to spend the next few years in a hospital bed. Silver froze. Amajiki knew Mirio well. Was he really that strong? I'm sure he is just trying to psych us out. There is no need to worry about hurting us. We have fought pros before. We aren't just wannabes. Karashima said and shot an encouraging smile at Silver, who looked unsure. Heard. But you're gonna have to show me that's the truth. Now who is gonna start this party? Mirio asked and Silver stepped back thinking of a way to attack the best. Chapter 8. Work Studies. Silver was in the long-distance fighters group. Though he fit well in either, he was better in long distance. Quickly he tried to strategize and he watched Izuku's foot pass through Mirio's face. That's his quirk. I have to go all out, Silver thought and clenched his fists, especially since there are no random boxes or barrels around. Sometimes, I make no sense. Jiro's scream easily made Silver snap out of his trance and he watched as Mirio began to take out the long-distance fighters. Mirio headed for Silver next, but Silver had a plan. Amajiki. Silver shouted in his mind and quickly opened a link between him and Mirio. The third year glanced in worry at his friend and Silver took the chance to dodge and stay on defense, guarding his stomach. He jumped back and went for close combat since he would knock him down later, giving Silver more time to think. Mirio appeared in front of Silver, but he was ready. The link allowed Silver to know what Mirio was thinking and Mirio to know what Silver was thinking if he let him, allowing Silver to know exactly when and what part of his body was solid. Silver quickly kicked his arm back and headed on, landing next to Iida. That was close. Silver panted and Mirio turned around looking at the group. Chaos heal. Silver whispered and instantly his energy was restored and he stood by Izuku and Mirio popped up again. It was no use, pun not intended, explaining how to dodge and counter since it required them to have the exact same power as Silver or something close and he couldn't waste time. He jumped back and was soon the last one standing. Wondering how I'm talking without using my mouth, huh? Silver asked telepathically and stuck out his tongue. Your quirk isn't too easy to use now, is it? Neither is mine. Silver yelled and kicked Mirio just in time for the opposing kick. You're rather good with your quirk, but mine isn't solid, so scientifically speaking, this should work. Silver dodged again. Your quirk is telepathy. Mirio asked with a smirk. Silver stuck out his tongue. Psych, I see. Hold. Cyan wrapped around Mirio and held him in place, even when he wasn't solid. Silver smiled with surprise and excitement, but too bad, since he doesn't practice telepathy, it drains a lot more energy than anything else he uses. So the longer he uses it, the less energy he has quickly. He began to pant and the cyan hold on Mirio flickered out and fell on his knees. Curse stupid mind strains, Silver said and landed on his knees panting. I didn't know I could do that. Mirio looked surprised and smiled at Silver, before punching him in the stomach. And that caused Silver to vomit pretty much immediately. Power. Mirio said in victory and Silver groaned. Now my head and stomach both hurt. Silver whimpered and closed his eyes in pain. I really need to work on my telepathy, maybe then I can use it longer without so much energy loss. But I did learn something new I can do with my quirk. That's awesome. I held Mirio even if it was for like 5 seconds, still a victory in my book. Silver thought and rolled over. Mirio smiled. Don't worry. You did well, you all have great potential. Dang it. I forgot to turn off the link. More energy loss. Okay Mirio, give me a minute to recover before I use too much energy and pass out again. Silver thought and Mirio nodded at him. No prob. Though it is weird to be sharing our thoughts, Mirio thought and shrugged as Silver sighed. Yeah, telepathy is a bit harder for me to control than my telekinesis, my main quirk. It kinda does a branch thing. I don't use it too often because it makes for a good distraction. Silver got up finally. Don't mind the buzz. Silver placed his hands on his temples and stuck out his tongue, and the small buzz in Mirio's head disappeared after a small pop, as if something got unplugged. Chaos heal. Silver quickly thought afterwards. There. Sorry about that. Silver said and chuckled nervously. The third year nodded. That's a taste of what it's like to fight me. Mirio said and Silver looked around at the class. We all just got punched in the stomach without ever knowing what was going on. Izuku said and Silver hummed. I had a small idea, Silver said and patted Izuku's shoulder. Mirio smiled. I know, right? So what do ya think? Isn't my quirk strong? Sero shouted, waving his arms. It's too strong. That's not fair. Mine's nothing in comparison. Hakutra shouted. Ashido was bouncing up and down. How can you slip through things and warp? Do you have 2 powers like Todoroki does? Nope. Just the one. Mirio said with a smile. Hado came up. Oh. Can I say it? Permeation. Cool, right? Amajiki sighed in the corner. Hado, let Mirio explain his own quirk. Izuku asked how he warps and Mirio smiled. I activate my quirk in my entire body. Then I can pass through anything I want, no sweat. Even solid ground. Izuku looked at Silver. Not Silver's quirk though. But why? Silver blinked. Telekinesis is a form of my own mind energy. It's not there, the glow is kinda just a side effect. It's like a ghost, and since Mirio is like that when he activates his quirk, I figured since they were in the same dimension, I could lay a hit or hold him. Silver explained, but enough about my quirk, back to Mirio. Not sure if that's how it would really work, but it's just my theory and to see if it's realistic or not. It's fanfiction for crying out loud. Sorry. Thank you. Mirio smiled and continued, when I activate my quirk I go deep underground, then after I adjust my pose I pop right back up. That's physics. Sounds like a buggy video game. Ashido said and Mirio laughed. Wow, you were born with a really strong quirk. Sue said and Silver thought differently. Mirio spoke softly. Not true. My power is only strong because I made it that way. While my quirk is activated my lungs can take oxygen. In the same way my eardrums don't work and light can't go through my retinas. I can pass through everything. The feeling took a full 180, but that means I can't feel anything in that state. Even though I have a body I can't stop falling. I could probably keep going down forever. Does that make sense? He asked and mostly everyone nodded. So say I want to go through a wall, I would have to concentrate really hard. I would have to activate everything but one leg. I would walk through and make my other leg solid too. Even for such a simple action, many steps are involved. Wow. If I were in a rush, I would mess that up every time. Kaminari said and Mineta nodded. I messed it up too, and I was watching it while I was writing it. How are you supposed to move when you can't feel anything? The short human exclaimed. Silver got lost in thought. Mineta's question was a good one. But if you grew up with that it would easily become natural to you. Silver could kinda relate to Mirio. Loud clapping snapped Silver out of his light trance. He even gives speeches like a pro. Ojiro said and Yaoyorozu agreed. Silver blinked, feeling slightly bad that he wasn't listening, but his light guilt was quickly replaced with sudden confusion. His vision blurred and the world around him lightly spun. He did his best to act normal, looking forwards and trying not to fall over. What's going on? Wait a minute. Another vis no, what the? Fear stopped his heart on instinct. Thin, mostly green, cat-like glowing eyes peered from the dark. One name came to mind. He wasn't sure how he knew him, but eerie, evil vibes came off those eyes in waves. Mephiles. The name caused Silver to freeze completely, utterly petrified. A soft, quiet laugh came from the darkness. It grew louder and more crazy, hidden words within the creepy laugh. I will find you. Silver the Hedgehog. This will be your end. The dark began to tighten around Silver, closing in and making a new claustrophobia grow in the poor kid as he made fearful attempts to push it away. His heart pounded wildly in his chest and he began to wave his hands out on instinct to stop the dark to fully close in. His poor attempts did nothing and helplessness grew wildly in him and he whimpered, feeling defeated, and he slowly backed up. A shadowy hand reached for his face and Silver yelped, closing his eyes and turning away. He prepared for any contact with the ominous shadow. But it never came. Feeling confused, and slightly safer, Silver peeked an eye open and found it was gone. The darkness, the hand, the eyes, the voice, all of it was gone. He was instead on the concrete gym floor with his knees close to his face and his arms shielding his face. Mr. Aizawa was bent down straight in front of him with his hand pulled back and everyone else worried around him in a circle. His fearful heart slowly returned to normal and his shakes of fear died down. Silver. Are you okay? Izuku asked, very worried, next to the kneeling teacher. Silver took slow breaths before nodding. Why yeah. Now I am. Mr. Aizawa frowned. Come with me. Silver shook his head. No, I'm alright. His brain still needed to process what happened. Mirio now frowned. You don't seem okay, tell me. When you see a student's eyes get all foggy and they start swaying while not responding to any action of communication. Then freezes with a look of pure fear before waving their hands around. Then when the teacher asks if they're alright, whimpers. Then the teacher tells them they were going to check them up, starting with a check for a fever, and they go into a fetal position, then ACTS all fine and says they're okay. Do you think that's okay? Wilp, no, not really. Ah, what? Silver blinked in confusion. Did he really act like that? None of them saw the eyes. Was he okay? If you're referring to me, I just need to rest. Izuku. See. Can I talk to you? Privately. He emphasized on privately to make sure it would be a secure conversation. All eyes on Izuku. Yeah, sure. Anything you need, Silver. Silver grabbed his hand and began to walk out, heading to his dorm. Where are you going? Mr. Aizawa asked, and Silver did not turn around. Silver just kept going, somewhere. Once out of the building, Silver quickly took to the skies and headed to his dorm. In a flash they were there and Silver locked his room, making Izuku feel nervous. Silver turned and looked at Izuku seriously. Did I really act like that? Yeah. Are you sure? Izuku began and Silver shook his head. No. He practically screamed, Izuku. He felt tears sting up in his eyes. I don't know what to do. Izuku looked worried. What's wrong? First, nothing that we talk about leaves this room. Okay. Silver locked eyes with Izuku and the boy nodded, okay. I'm not sure what's wrong. I think I got another vision during class. But this one was different. I don't have a headache, and he shouldn't have said that. Silver's eyes flashed in immense pain and he squeezed his eyes shut, tears falling like waterfalls. He reached out for Deku and the boy already a step ahead caught him. Silver squeezed Izuku's arm much tighter than needed, but he needed to know what was and wasn't real. Now Silver, Mephiles teased, I'll be seeing you soon. Very soon. But for now, the dark being snapped his fingers and Silver felt his head pain increase by 10 times, too much for him to handle, causing him to black out. But not before he heard Mephiles' last words, night, night my little Heiji. Silver woke up the next day, soft light filtered into the room. Softly, the pale-haired kid sat up and looked out the window, seeing the sun was setting. How long was he out? What even? Night, night my little Heiji. The words rang loud in his ears and he lightly rubbed his head. Silver sighed. That answers one thing. He got up and walked up to his balcony. He walked onto his high porch and leaned over to see Izuku with some other guy. Odd. Leaning too far out, Silver fell off and fell. Then landed face first into the ground next to Izuku. The green-haired boy jumped with a terrified yelp. What the heck? Ouch, Silver muttered and got up, spitting a little bit of blood out of his mouth. Izuku went wide-eyed. Silver. Are you okay? You have been sleeping for quite a while, and how is your injury? Just a little bit of blood. You fell like 5 stories high. A.N. Laughs so hard I fall out my chair. Yeah. How? I didn't feel like giving him a lot of injuries, but kids don't follow that example, you'll die for sure. Serious, please don't go doing that. I don't know. And yeah, never felt so refreshed in my life. Anyways, who was that? Silver blinked, looking at the silhouette in the distance. Izuku hummed, just a reporter. Oh, hey, want some meat buns? All Might brought 'em over earlier. Yum. I think. What's a meat bun? Silver asked to get up and Izuku just laughed. Come on. The green-haired boy said and led him inside. Recovery girl checked him up before Silver was allowed to go to class, getting the go-ahead. Silver rushed over to his classroom wanting to know the answer to the work studies, but before he could open the door a very loud "what?" resounded from the room. Wincing at the noise, Silver opened the door to see Bakugo slam his hands on his desk and laugh victoriously while standing up. Silver felt awkward, so he just quickly went over to his desk and sat down, and by seeing everyone's disappointed faces, seems like the answer was. But some people think we won't be able to raise good heroes with that sort of protective outlook. And with that outlook in mind, the compromise is to be selective about participating agencies. So choose one with a proven track record, otherwise you won't be taking part. Mr. Ozawa said, and Silver smiled. Yes. Wait a minute, he wasn't in the sports festival, he never even learned what it was, and the heroes don't even know he goes to the school or is a pretty good hero, he had nowhere to start. Silver frowned deep in thought when a gentle headache came and showed a man with dark brown hair, yellow and green, covering his suit. Okay. Just don't be arrogant and follow orders. The man said in an annoyed tone. Welcome to the Lock Agency. The seance subsided and he smiled. Lock, well, now he had a place to start. For the rest of the class until he got a break, his mind was whirling with excitement and wonder about his future mentor. He didn't even know who Lock was. Once he got a break, he immediately began his research. Mr. Ozawa came up to help Silver find an agency, only to see Silver doing multiple things at once, most of them glowing in cyan. On his phone, many tabs were pulled up and paper was scattered about on his desk glowing cyan while pencils glowing the same when writing stuff down. Seems like you're excited. Mr. Ozawa said and glanced at one of the papers with the name Lock on it and frowned. How does he know Lock when he doesn't even know who Endeavor is? Plus it will be impossible to get a work study there because he hasn't done a work study in a year because of the last kid he had, but he has done them before, so if he could somehow convince him then Silver could be able to. Mr. Ozawa chuckled at Silver. How do you even know who Lock is? A.N. Also heads up, that is completely untrue because I made it up just for this and I'm not sure if it's Rock or Lock, but I'm going with Lock. Also he will most likely be out of character. Sorry. I tried, not much to go off though. Without looking up, Silver's ear flicked, indicating he heard. Training, he muttered, and Mr. Ozawa rose a brow. Give me a second. All the papers suddenly piled into one neat stack and the pencils laid on top nicely. I kinda leveled up and reached a new ability, along with more headaches. Silver looked at Mr. Ozawa with a half there kinda look and hummed. Remember when you had your scarf around me too tight? Mr. Ozawa nodded. Yes, so you're telling me that you got telepathy. And may I ask how that loops to you knowing who Lock is? No, I could do that before. I personally don't like to invade personal privacy, plus it takes a lot of energy. Silver muttered, his mind definitely on something else, most likely his work study. I got foresight but it happens randomly and it's very painful afterwards, so it'll take 3 hours. I guess I'll leave you to that then. But we are talking more about this later, okay? Mr. Ozawa said and Silver nodded, absent-mindedly. A.N. Yeah, he has a lot that Ozawa wants to talk about later. Grabbing the papers, Silver ran out of the room and the teacher sighed. Silver ran through the halls, with Iida yelling at him to walk, and slowed down just before he collided with Izuku and Silver fell backwards. A large grin was plastered onto his face and Silver got up, seeing Mirio next to Izuku and nodded. Everyone, this is the end of this part. Maybe I will continue this story after I finish one of my texting stories, so like and subscribe for more. So see you next time.